I am Liu Nian. After a heartbreak, I entered a game to try to save my father and my cousin, but I ended up becoming the emperor of this small world, and now I possess the sacred body of dual cultivation. On a night, a young man walks down the street, sighing, reflecting on yet another failed job interview. He wonders when his life will finally take off. This young man is Liu Nian, the protagonist of this story. He is a university graduate and has already been rejected 18 times in job interviews. Despite this, he has a beautiful, caring, and attentive girlfriend. They met on the university campus, and she is always there to comfort him when he feels exhausted. Liu Nian tries to forget the frustrating interview, because today marks 3 years of their relationship, and he plans to surprise her. As he leaves the house, he spots a parked car rocking back and forth. He hears some voices and feels that one of them is familiar. As he approaches the vehicle, he sees his girlfriend at the window. She turns inside and says that her boyfriend is outside. The man inside the car tells her to keep going, saying that this makes the situation much more exciting. Liu becomes completely furious upon seeing that scene. At that moment, his mother calls him, and he wonders why she would be calling at this hour. When he answers, she informs him that his father and cousin are not doing well and had to undergo emergency surgery. He asks his mother not to panic and says he will get there as soon as possible. Leaving the cake behind, he runs off to meet his family. Meanwhile, at the hospital, the doctor tells Liu's mother that for now, they are stable but have fallen into a deep coma and may not survive for much longer. He adds that, recently, the hospital has been receiving several patients with the same symptoms, and specialists have been unable to determine the true cause of the problem. Finally, he warns her to be prepared for the worst. A few minutes later, Liu arrives at the hospital looking for his father. His mother informs him that his father suddenly fell into a coma and, desperate, asks what they will do now. She says she had warned him not to play for too long and questions the consequences of what happened. The woman sitting beside her comments that she also tried to warn her son, but he disappeared. Even after filing a complaint about the game with the police, it was in vain, as they were told the server was foreign. Moreover, even if they destroyed the VR glasses, new ones would appear at their doorstep the next day. Liu wonders what kind of game this could be. Then, he remembers that his father had mentioned a game in which he invited his cousin to play and mine money for the family. On his way home, Liu is holding the game's VR headset and remembers that it is an online game, recently released, that became very popular for being extremely realistic. Due to this immersion, the game caused a huge stir in the gaming community. However, his father and cousin fell into a coma after playing it. Because of this, he decides to solve this mystery on his own. When he puts on the headset and enters the game, a welcome message from the system appears. 5 hours later, on Iron Mountain in the wilderness region, a ghost appears searching for a man. It asks for the weapon he received in the beginner's package, and no monster would be able to survive an attack from it. After defeating the ghost, Liu gains some XP, a few coins, and a cultivation stone. He comments that the coins were few, but the stone grants 300 cultivation points, which makes him very happy with his achievement. While collecting his reward, he thinks that, although he hasn't fully understood the game's mechanics yet, so far, it seems that all he has to do is hunt rare monsters outside the city. However, suddenly, he is struck by a purple lightning bolt. He wonders which cursed mage dared to ambush him right after he left the novice city. The people approaching him comment that a level 10 beginner hunting monsters outside the city must be a complete idiot. Another suggests killing him right away to take the rare cultivation stone. They surround Liu, and one of them asks if he is enjoying his time outside. A girl begins to mock his equipment, while another player claims he will show the power of a superior player. Liu steps forward, declaring that it won't be so easy to intimidate him. Then, he uses a stink bomb he got in the beginner's village and takes the opportunity to run while his opponent is trapped in the stench curtain. He feels relieved for having bought all the items from the beginner's village, as they helped him survive. However, before he can fully escape, he is struck by a precise blow to the back. His HP bar is nearly depleted. The attacker is the girl, who thanks the man named Chao for buying that weapon for her. Liu falls to the ground as Chao approaches and declares that this time, he won't let him escape. Besides stealing his woman, he will take all his equipment. Then, he launches another attack and says he will take all his coins and stones. Lying on the ground, Liu wonders why it hurts so much. After all, since it's just a game, it shouldn't feel this real. He feels his heart ache, and his vision begins to blur. He wonders if he is truly about to lose his life. At that moment, a voice emerges, calling Liu king and welcoming him back. Another voice follows, delighted at the return of his majesty. Liu begins to open his eyes and sees two girls in front of him. One of them says she missed him. Seeing this, the protagonist realizes that he has not returned to the novice village, and has no idea where he has ended up. He wonders who these two beautiful girls are, as they do not seem to be players. Then, suddenly, another girl appears, pushes the other two aside, and asks if he remembers her. She approaches and introduces herself as Su Daji, saying that she will finally be able to bathe with him again. The purple-haired girl complains, saying that in her master's past life, he always favored Daji, and she asks that this time, he allow her to serve him. The green-haired girl picks up a mirror and expresses her joy at her master's rebirth. Showing him the mirror, she states that she will help him remember. Looking at his reflection, Liu is shocked. He strikes the mirror and asks what the hell this place is, who the three girls are, and why he has appeared there. The three girls bow to Liu and explain that this place is the tomb of Zhuanyuan. They reveal that they are three demons who guard the tomb. One of them adds that, before His Majesty's death, he foretold that he would be reborn 1,000 years later, and they had been waiting for him in the tomb. The protagonist thinks that, due to a game bug, he accidentally reincarnated as King Zhou, which means he might have a harem of beautiful women. The green-haired girl apologizes for her poor service and asks him to punish her. Liu then replies that she can help him with a little something. Internally, he reasons that these girls are probably NPCs, and as King Zhou, it would not be wrong to ask them to do something for him. Daji says that he may be tired from reincarnating and asks if he would like to take a bath with her. The protagonist, excited, declares that he is so happy there that he never wants to leave. Arriving at another place, he says he didn't expect there to be a hot spring with peach blossom flowers inside. Daji then comments that they had been waiting for him. Looking ahead, he sees the two girls welcoming him. Daji is happy that he has finally arrived, and lets the towel fall into the water. Liu notices a faint aroma of wine in the hot springs, and thinks that this game not only looks real, but even the scents are incredibly realistic. Daji explains that in his past life, he loved bathing in wine because it helped replenish his energy and improve his cultivation. She urges him to hurry, as the girls are waiting. Excited, Liu mentions that the wine cellar and meat garden can enhance cultivation and asks for them to start right away. Daji responds that it will be an honor to join him. The purple-haired girl, Shi Mei, says that she also wants to cultivate with him, while the green-haired one states that since he is a good ruler, he will have to share everything equally. He then says that, in that case, all of them should join in the cultivation practice. Liu thinks that this trio is amazing and that each of them moves him. Then, he asks the universe to let him stay there a little longer. And so, they begin the internal cultivation practice. Sometime later, a system message appears, congratulating him for unlocking a new class, the Human Emperor. Liu realizes that an entire night of cultivation allowed him to unlock a hidden class and learn new abilities. Everything felt so real that he now feels exhausted. Sometime later, the green-haired girl appears and says that something bad has happened. Shen Gongbao brought people to Xuanyuan's tomb, saying that he wants to settle matters with her sister at the Xuanxi Palace. Mei explains that Gongbao is not good at all, as he betrayed the Celestial Kingdom and is complicit with demonic sects. She warns that if he discovers the Lord is there, no one knows what he might do. At that moment, Daji says she will use the concealment technique and asks him to wait until she returns from Xuan Palace. The green-haired girl urges her to hurry there before that man becomes suspicious. Sometime later, at Xuan Palace, Daji arrives at the place. Gongbao tells Daji that it has been a long time since he last saw her. Daji steps forward and states that the throne should belong to the king, demanding that he not cross that line. One of the guards intervenes, saying that a mere fox demon dares to attack the future king of the demonic world. Daji glares at him and attacks directly. The guard asks her to wait, not to be rash, and to listen to what Gongbao has to say. Daji stops and orders him to speak quickly. Gongbao stands up and remarks that the emperor's soul dissipated 1,000 years ago. Yet Daji is still so in love. He reflects that, even after all this time, her cultivation power has not diminished, and for this reason, he wishes to win her over. He then begins to explain that ever since the primordial Lord of Heaven and Jiang Ziya designed an online game and transported humans to a small world for training, talents have been selected to ascend to the celestial realm. Meanwhile, humans leave puppets in reality to continue their lives. Since this game contains many elements of popular games and is extremely realistic, more than 1 million players have started playing since its release. Gongbao reveals that he has learned that players can be reborn without damaging their real bodies. But due to a conspiracy, the game's mechanism was adjusted, connecting the demonic world to the small game world. Several demons began invading that world and disguising themselves to collect human essence. When this happens, the player's puppets fall into a coma. Zhang Bao reports that he has already made expeditions to this world, and that some humans who encountered the demons were drained. He suggests transporting more humans to this small world to harvest their essences. This way, they will gain more power, be able to break the barrier, and unify the 3 realms, making this goal attainable. The protagonist hears everything and is shocked to realize that it was not just a game. He understands that some NPCs in the game are actually real and disguised demons, leading him to suspect that his father and cousin may have encountered one of these fake NPCs. Gongbao then recalls that before dying, Emperor Xia told Daji that he would return after 1,000 years. He asks if there are any clues about this, and continues explaining that the essence of the human emperor is extremely precious. If they manage to devour his soul and essence, the cultivation of the demonic sect leader will increase significantly. Even knowing that Daji is in love, Gongbao urges her to understand the gravity of the situation. Daji states that there have been no abnormalities recently, and that even if the emperor were to reincarnate, he would not remember anything and would not return there. Gongbao tells her that the celestial realm has kept them trapped in that tomb for 1,000 years, and that if they help him find the emperor, he will ensure their freedom. He then takes his leave, stating that he will patrol some areas of the game map and will not waste any more time there. After Gongbao's departure, Daji returns to the tomb and frees the protagonist from his pendant. He declares that he must stop Gongbao, as thousands of people could die if he succeeds in his plans, and the demonic realm would invade the real world. Determined, he decides to use his human emperor cultivation to find his father, Jiang, and thwart the conspiracy. The young women kneel before him, vowing to protect and serve him until the end. Daji then reveals a seal and explains that it is an artifact that only those with the emperor's lineage can open, asking him to examine it. Liu takes the object, wondering what might be inside. Daji instructs him to say the words, "I am the human emperor. Open the jade seal." As soon as he does, a yellow light begins to emanate from the seal, which floats in the air before finally opening before him. A sword appears. Upon seeing it, the protagonist becomes furious, as that damned sword is rusted. Shi Mei says that it seems to be the sword of the Phoenix King, which His Highness used to carry. She explains that the aura of the Phoenix Dragon's sword is fierce, capable of breaking through an army of 1 million men, but it requires a large amount of rare materials to be activated. Shi Mei says she will send the list of materials to His Majesty later. Liu realizes that he won't be able to use the sword right now, and that he needs to kill some monsters to level up while he's still under the effect of a buff. Daji suddenly hugs him. Saddened, she asks if he's already leaving the tomb, as after such a long separation, she can't bear to be away from him again. Liu gently strokes her head and says that he will always return so he can cultivate internally with them, asking her to be a good girl. Daji replies that it's wonderful, as she will be able to serve the king once again. The protagonist tries to teleport to the novice village, but he is unable to. Shi Mei explains that the village is too far away, so using normal teleportation is not possible. He asks if he's trapped there, and how he's supposed to level up. His third consort explains that his jade seal has a teleportation function, and that all he needs to do is think of the place, and he will arrive at his destination. Liu then takes the seal in his hand and concentrates. A portal opens above him. His consorts bow and bid farewell to their lord. Finally, he returns to the village of novices. Tired, Liu says he'll try to kill some monsters later, but at that moment, a crowd of people runs toward him, saying that the world boss has appeared. Looking at them, the protagonist wonders what that could be. A girl yells for everyone to get out of the way. Liu looks up and sees a beautiful, angelic girl flying over him. She lands, stepping on a few men who get irritated by it. However, our beloved protagonist is mesmerized by the girl and remarks that she is very beautiful. He watches her from a distance and remembers that those wings were a super rare item that increased speed. Even though many spent a lot of money trying to get them, few ever succeeded. Sometime later, a group of people was attacking a ginseng tree which, when destroyed, would grant a ripened fruit that served as a precious material to enhance cultivation. Liu was observing from a distance. He thought that this boss likely dropped rare materials, but decided to wait for now. A girl appeared holding a sword and charged toward the tree, delivering several strikes. Even though she was 2 levels below that demon, she felt she could handle the situation. Watching from afar, Liu thought she was very skilled. However, a crack began to open behind Liu, and a root emerged from it, grabbing both of their feet and wrapping them together, trapping them against each other. At that moment, Liu panicked. After trying to hold her, he couldn't take it anymore. The girl then noticed something strange, and asked what that weapon was that he was hiding and pressing against her abdomen. Liu, stammering, said it wasn't what she thought. It was just because she had been moving too much and things had gotten awkward for him. At that moment, a few ginseng fruits appeared beside them. The girl thought they were going to explode, and she was right. The fruits exploded on top of Liu, melting her clothes. Trying to pull himself together, he asked her to think about the magical items they had, as a second wave of explosions was approaching. The girl replied that she had an item called Phoenix Feather, which could get them out of there, but she couldn't use it at that moment. Liu told her not to worry, that he knew how to activate it. However, he let himself be carried away by strong emotions, and commented that he was smelling something really good. Annoyed, the girl reminded him that the next wave of explosions was coming, and that this was definitely not the time to be thinking about things like that. The girl asks him to activate the item quickly. He pulls her necklace with his mouth and tells her to stop moving. Then, he manages to activate the phoenix quickly. The girl is impressed, as it would normally take time to activate. The phoenix directly attacks the ginseng tree, and they manage to break free. The other people are somewhat upset, partly because the protagonist is siding with the girl, and partly because they find the power gap between paying and non-paying players in the game unfair. At that moment, the ginseng tree returns to its mutant form. The protagonist tells the girl not to worry, that he will take care of it. The men around them mock the protagonist, who is only level 9 and wants to face the boss alone. Hearing the comments, the girl remembers that her items are stored in the city warehouse and thinks that if things go wrong, she'll retreat. Even if it's embarrassing, it's better than dying and losing her gear. With the phoenix necklace in his mouth, the protagonist smiles and then jumps at the tree, activating the phoenix once again. The creature attacks the tree again. The surrounding people are completely shocked, while the phoenix continues to burn the demonic tree. The protagonist returns to the ground, being watched from afar by the girl, and manages to defeat the ginseng tree. Everyone is amazed by the power of that magical item. Then, a system message appears, congratulating Liu Nian for successfully defeating the ginseng tree. In addition to receiving rewards, he levels up from 9 to 12. The girl is fascinated. He used the phoenix 3 times in a row. Those 2 traders watch Liu from a distance, and Chao comments that Liu has many treasures and that they should find a way to rob him later. People around the protagonist become euphoric. The girl hears someone say there's something hidden in his mouth, something that could instantly activate magical items. She then thinks that might really be the secret behind his power. At that moment, the protagonist is looking at the phoenix item in his hand, until it breaks. Liu panics, knowing that item was worth the equivalent of a house in the city. The girls start running toward him, calling him a hero and wanting to be with him. But the girl thinks that if she kisses him, she'll find out his secret, because she believes he won't be able to resist. She starts running toward him, knocking down all the other girls in her way. As she gets close, Before he can say anything, she kisses him, leaving the protagonist completely confused. They kiss for so long that they end up lying on the ground naturally. The girl realizes she didn't find anything, and the protagonist, gasping for air, says he was just going to tell her he broke her phoenix necklace. The girl gets up and replies that it was only 3 million. She explains that since he blocked the explosion earlier, his gear was damaged. She invites him to go to the Manhwa Tower auction house to take a look. The protagonist, shocked, says the things there are way too expensive. She grabs his hand and says it's just a thank you, and that now they should go to her apartment to change clothes. In truth, the girl is fuming. She lost her first kiss and didn't discover anything. She's not going to let it slide and is determined to search him thoroughly. She then thinks, with determination, "Tonight I'll take everything from him." Arriving at her house, the protagonist is startled by the size of the mansion located in the VIP area. Looking inside, he starts doing the math. The in-game currency is 1-to-1, so that residence is worth millions. He enters her room and is enchanted by everything, even throwing himself onto the bed. The girl comments that the last battle left her feeling very dirty, so she's going to take a shower. And so she does. At that moment, the protagonist wonders how he ended up at that level, and whether she might somehow be offering herself to him. While showering, the girl says she's glad she bought a box of charming incense earlier. She applies the product to her body and states that as soon as he faints, she'll look for whatever he's hiding. Sometime later, she returns to the room. Since there was still some time before the Manhwa Tower auction, they could rest for a while. The protagonist and his friend, seeing the situation, get excited. She asks how his legs are doing, and he replies that they're feeling great. Then she asks if he wants to try a little. Smelling the incense, he leans in to sniff her and, unable to hold back, jumps on top of her, saying he can't take it anymore. Confused, the girl wonders why he didn't pass out from the smell. At that moment, she remembers what happened earlier. She had gone to a merchant to ask if he had something that could knock anyone out. The merchant offered her a box and explained that simply knocking someone out might not be effective, but the vial inside contained something much stronger. She decided to buy it. Back in the present, she realizes the merchant had actually sold her an aphrodisiac instead of a knockout elixir. The protagonist kisses her, and she ends up giving in to the moment and the situation. The next day, she's wrapped in the sheets, thinking that she didn't manage to uncover anything. And on top of that, got too involved in something that lasted more than 6 hours. Liu apologizes for that. She gets up in a panic and says that apologizing won't help. Now he's the son-in-law of the Fang family. She grabs a virtue manual and tells him that regardless, he's her partner now. If she finds out that he's not walking the straight path, she threatens to cut off his little buddy. She walks away and says it's getting late and they need to go to the Manhwa Tower auction. At that moment, she collapses to the floor, and he, worried, asks what happened and if she's okay. She turns to him and says, "It's all his fault." Liu apologizes again. She throws a card at him and says it has a 1 billion limit, asking him to leave. The protagonist accepts immediately, but later goes into shock when he realizes the card's limit. Miss Fang returns to bed and tells him he can buy whatever he wants, as she's going to rest for a while. As he gets ready, the protagonist thinks he doesn't like depending on anyone, but for the sake of his father's safety, he'll accept it for now. Lying in bed, Miss Fang reflects that the night was very good, that Liu is a strong man, and if he trains a bit, he'll become a great asset to the Fang family. Sometime later, upon arriving at Manhwa Tower, Liu thinks to himself that just the entry fee is 1 million. He wonders if this is the world of big spenders. At that moment, he notices someone familiar nearby. It's his ex-girlfriend, together with her current partner. Chow asks why a beggar is trying to enter the auction. The trader mocks the protagonist and says she was very lucky to have chosen Brother Chow. Otherwise, her life would be a mess. The protagonist calls them a despicable couple and says he'll show them what true wealth looks like today. A receptionist asks if he wants to participate in the auction and informs him that, in order to do so, he must prove he has a fortune exceeding 10 million. At that moment, the protagonist thinks that he will indeed have to use Feng Xie's money. but decides he will repay her for it later. The traitorous couple starts laughing at the protagonist. Chao declares that if Liu has the money to enter the auction, he will live-stream himself eating feces. The girl, laughing, says she knows just how poor he is, which makes the people around them start mocking the protagonist. However, he pulls out the card he received from Feng Qier, leaving everyone around stunned, as it takes more than 100 million in spending to possess such a card. The couple suspects the card is fake, and asks security to check it thoroughly. The guard approaches the protagonist and warns that, if the card is fake, he will suffer the consequences. But when the card is scanned, it is instantly approved. The guard returns to the entrance and informs the protagonist that he is welcome in the VIP area. The guard turns to the two traitors and tells them not to cause a scene, and if they must eat feces, to do it near the local chemical toilet. The two are left speechless, while the people around laugh at them. Even so, they stand up and walk toward the auction entrance. Chao claims that Liu will pay for making them go through such humiliation, but they are stopped as the entrance is exclusive to VIPs, and they only have a standard gold card. Chao glances to the side, sees the size of the line, and thinks it's the worst day of his life. The girl is furious that Chao couldn't get into the VIP area with her, and having been humiliated by Liu, decides she needs to find someone much richer. Sometime later, inside the auction room, Liu is seated, reflecting on the rumors he heard about treasures and cultivation techniques often auctioned there. Meanwhile, Chao watches the protagonist from a distance and assumes he must have stolen or obtained that card illegally. At that moment, the Madame of Baohua Tower asks for everyone's attention and announces the beginning of the session. She presents the first item, an ice jade incense, a high-level artifact refined with essences from various rare fragrances. When used in battle, it restores 50% of the user's health. The starting bid is 1 million, with minimum increments of 100,000. Several bids begin. Chao stands up, offers 2 million, and says he'll give it as a gift to his girlfriend, because, unlike a certain someone, he knows how to choose presents, even after 3 years of dating. Smiling, he mentally challenges the protagonist. Liu raises his paddle and offers 4 million. People around say the item isn't worth that much, as it's just a support artifact. Chao, at that moment, realizes he can't compete with someone who holds a gold-black card. The hostess strikes the gavel and closes the deal at 4 million. She congratulates the winner and announces the next item. Upon receiving the incense, the protagonist thinks it could save lives and is therefore worth every penny. The girl, now intrigued, wonders if Liu was provoked by Chao's words, and if so, she won't turn him down. The following rounds go by without any particularly special items, just as the protagonist suspected. Then comes the final round, featuring an item called the 9 Luminaria's Azure Dragon Cloak. The protagonist gets excited upon seeing it. The hostess explains that the item is made with the finest golden thread, imbued with the essence of dragon bones, and grants exceptional physical and magical attack and defense, turning its wearer into a walking powerhouse. The starting bid is 3 million, with minimum increments of 100,000. Everyone in the room shows great interest. Chao stands and places a bid. The girl praises him, while he only wonders what the protagonist will do next. Liu stands and announces a bid of 10 million. Everyone is shocked by the amount, with many reacting in frustration or anger. The hostess becomes interested in Liu, as she didn't expect to see such a big spender at a regular auction. She says she won't let him slip away, and finalizes the sale at 10 million. The protagonist turns to Chao and says, "This is what it means to be truly rich, and you're not even close to my level." Liu then decides that everyone who insulted him will pay. The traitor, realizing the situation, begins to think of a way to get close to Liu again, and decides that she will return to him. The protagonist arrived at the locker room of Baohua Tower. He felt very good in his new outfit, until his ex-girlfriend appeared at the door, saying she had made a mistake and wanted a second chance. Smiling, the protagonist asked if she wasn't with Jin Chao now, and why she was crawling back to him. The girl approached, apologized, and said she had made a mistake. Since they had not celebrated their 3-year dating anniversary, she intended to make it up to him that night. Looking at that viper, the protagonist thought that, at this point, she meant nothing to him anymore, and he had already seen far better. He then recalled his beautiful consorts. Rejecting the woman, The protagonist said that during their 3-year relationship, she had never wanted to do anything, claiming it would only happen after marriage. But with Jin Chao, it had been different. At that moment, someone arrived at the locker room door and asked why there was so much noise. Liu was surprised to see that it was the madam of Baohua Tower. She approached and asked if he had some time to talk that night. Avoiding looking directly into her eyes, the protagonist grew excited at the proposal. Meanwhile, his ex, fallen to the ground, watched the two of them. The madam then kicked the traitor, saying that a mediocre person like her should be content with cleaning the tower's bathrooms. Chao arrived at that moment, accusing the protagonist of being a fraud and bringing some guards with him. The men asked Liu to cooperate with the investigation and hand over his card so they could verify the account. Liu handed over the card, but mentally called out to Miss Fang, asking her to save him from any trouble. The pair of traitors gathered again and began mocking the protagonist. However, the guard announced that the card had been verified and was indeed registered in Mr. Liu's name. The protagonist felt relieved, mentally thanking Miss Fang for changing the account information just in time. Before leaving, the guard warned Chao that if he continued slandering others, he would be sent for interrogation. Irritated, Chao turned to Liu and asked how a rat like him could have obtained such a card and what trick he had used. Laughing, Liu replied that he loved seeing Chao so angry. Furious, Chao drew his sword, saying he would eliminate Liu. Confident, the protagonist challenged him, saying he wanted to test his new outfit. However, the lady of the tower struck Chao with her fan and stated that it was enough, threatening to eliminate him if he insisted on fighting inside Baohua Tower. Beaten, Chao realized it was better not to mess with her. As he and the ex-girlfriend reached the door, before they could say anything else, the lady of the tower kicked them out. Turning to the protagonist, the lady of the tower said he now owed her a favor and asked how he intended to repay her. Liu thanked her for the help and offered to buy her dinner. She refused, saying that dinner was not necessary, and suggested he come to her room to talk a little. Liu, remembering he had just spent the previous night with Fang Qier and fearing he would be exhausted, hesitated, asking if that wouldn't be inappropriate, as she seemed to be a married woman. Sadly, she asked if he was suggesting she was too old. Approaching him, she claimed to have far more skills than any younger woman. Whispering something in his ear, she left the protagonist desperate to escape, claiming he had something urgent to resolve. However, she stopped him, asked him to listen, and then pulled him into a kiss. While kissing him, she thinks she heard that he might have something hidden in his mouth, and she wants to search for it herself. She tastes the same flavor as her older sister, but wonders if her sister had not been sealed in the tomb of Xuanyuan. Then she thinks, if there's a trace in the mouth, there must be one elsewhere too. She kneels down and tells the protagonist that she will help him relax a little. She realizes it is indeed the taste of her older sister, as well as that of Sister Hu and Sister Wang. At that moment, the protagonist wonders if this is how the rich live. The young woman questions who else, besides Emperor Xin, could have had the services of her sisters. She had heard that Emperor Xin once worked at the Celestial Marriage Registration Office, but was demoted to the human realm for frequently missing work. The protagonist, feeling extremely hot and unable to hold back any longer, ends up setting off fireworks. The girl stands up and asks how it was for him, and trembling, Liu responds that it was incredible, absolutely fantastic. She then offers him a cell phone, saying that since he is new there, he might not yet have a way to communicate, and now he would have her contact. If he needed anything, he could call her, as Qingjuya would always be available for him. The protagonist becomes excited upon realizing that in that world there were also cell phones, as he thought everyone still used talismans to communicate. Smiling, she says that Liu is funny, because using talismans was something from ancient times. Nowadays, people use cell phones for distant calls and telepathy for close-range communication. She hugs Liu and asks if he would like her to teach him telepathy. Suddenly, a light appears in front of Liu. It is the Emperor's jade seal, making Ya certain that he must be the reincarnation of Emperor Xin. At that moment, she gives him a storage ring and explains that leaving a cell phone exposed could cause trouble. But with the ring, he could store it safely. He thanks her, and she responds that it's no problem. However, she then remembers her sister, who has been trapped for 1,000 years, and how her family had faced difficult times since then. The protagonist wonders if Ya might be working with Shen Gongbao, but the girl tells him to relax, as she would not betray him. The protagonist is surprised to realize that she was able to read his mind. She warns him to be more careful with his thoughts around powerful people, as they can see what is on someone's mind. The protagonist then starts praising her in every possible way. Embarrassed, the Lady of the Tower replies that he does not seem like Emperor Xin, and asks if all the time away had softened him. But she quickly asks him to stop joking, reminding him that the place was dangerous. She picks up a book of teachings about the mortal journey, and tells him to try to learn something from it. The protagonist thanks her for her kindness, and asks if the tower sells information, as he wanted to know something about his father and cousin. She confirms and says she will make the request, and they will probably get a reply in a few days. The protagonist thanks her and says he will return to cultivating, so as not to take more of her time. She answers that she would have stayed longer with him, as she thought they would spend most of the night together. At that moment, a short man appears and asks if he can talk to her late into the night, since he has a lot of free time. Annoyed, she asks if he ever gets tired. The man insists, offering her his great-grandfather's treasure in exchange for her company. Irritated, she spits something into the man's mouth, who comments that the taste was a bit salty that day and asks if she is feeling well. Furious, she yells at him to leave, while in the background, the protagonist recognizes his little ones in the man's mouth. Sometime later, the protagonist is leaving the tower when the short man calls out to him, asking Liu to wait. Looking back, the protagonist wonders if the man realized what he had just eaten. The protagonist turned around and asked what the man wanted. The short, irate man said that even though Liu was just a mortal, Sister Qingqiu served him willingly. The protagonist wondered if that man was about to try and hit him, but suddenly the man grabbed Liu's hand and, crying, asked how he had managed to win over Sister Qingqiu or if he had some trick up his sleeve. Seeing the situation, the protagonist questioned whether that man was an idiot. Liu then turned and said he didn't have time, as he was going to hunt some monsters to level up. The man clung to Liu's legs, saying that killing monsters was nothing compared to this issue, and begged the protagonist to teach him some trick. The man revealed he was from the Tiangang sect and claimed they offered a wide range of cultivation resources. At that moment, the protagonist remembered that this guild was known as a black market, and that having this man as an ally would be a great boost in the business world. So, the protagonist told the man that if he really wanted to know the secret, he would have to prove he was willing to pay for it. The man showed several items and explained that the prices of those rare items were much lower than at the tower auction, offering them as a gift to the protagonist. Confident, Liu thought he had already expected that from this guy, and that surely those were valuable items. The man began explaining the full uses of the items and asked if Liu could now reveal his trick. Liu then offered a book, saying it detailed the art of intimacy between a man and a woman, including various techniques. The book also helped nurture one's essence, benefiting both body and mind. Happy, the man thanked the protagonist, and after reading a little of the book, he commented that it was indeed a definitive guide. Sneaking away, the protagonist thought that he had written down everything Sudaji had taught him in that book, and now he could level up a bit more. Elsewhere, in a local forest, the protagonist was surrounded by forest wolves. Probably over 100 in that place. Prepared with his new items, Liu said he was ready to crush them. He charged at several wolves and eliminated them all with a single blow. A system message appeared, congratulating him for reaching level 20. Sitting on the ground, the protagonist analyzed that the potions and talismans from the little man had been excellent, greatly accelerating his growth. However, he remembered that he still didn't have a class, and said he would head to the main hall to take a look. Arriving at the main hall, the attendant asked how she could help him. He replied that he had reached level 20, and asked if she could assist him in changing his class to warrior. The girl tried, but failed. The protagonist then asked if he could change to swordsman, but again it failed. The attendant apologized and said that the system indicated he did not meet the requirements for a class change. Desperate, the protagonist said that this was ridiculous, and asked why. Leaving the place, he wondered if it had something to do with his identity as an emperor. He then decided to return and ask Su Daji about the situation. Returning to the tomb, he noticed that his emperor form had reappeared. When Daji saw him arriving, She ran to him and said she had missed him. Liu replied that his boost was almost over and that he had returned to recharge it. He asked why he couldn't change his class. Daji explained that because of his imperial bloodline, he could not be compared to mere commoners. She then said that she would prepare a spiritual fruit, which had the power to raise his limits. But he would need to be conservative with special techniques for 3 days. Liu thanked her for this. His second consort appeared, saying that she too had missed him and was very happy to be able to serve him. Consort Mei commented that from now on, he shouldn't have a favorite anymore, but rather share his love among all of them. Daji explained that while he was away, they had channeled their cultivation to create a unique artifact for him. The protagonist became excited upon hearing this, and Daji asked him to follow her. The protagonist then came across a radiant red bed. Daji said that this artifact would make his cultivation twice as fast. Embarrassed, Liu said that this must truly be a precious treasure. The girls then climbed onto the bed and asked what he was waiting for to start cultivating. A long time has passed in cultivation, and a new disciple has been introduced. The disciple's name is Niu. She bows and says she is happy to meet the king. But at that moment, his phone starts ringing. The lady of the Baohua Tower was calling. She informs him that she has just received news of someone who was found collapsed near a pool, and everything indicates that it's his cousin. She warns him that the area is inhabited by strange monsters and that he needs to be careful. The protagonist thanks them and says he didn't expect news about his cousin so soon. He then grabs the artifact and quickly teleports away. Elsewhere, in the Tiwei Mountains, at Bibo Pool, the protagonist arrives and sees a great commotion ahead of him. One of the men says there's a rumor about a precious treasure in that area and demands that the fish NPC hand over the treasures. Crying, the fish man says he's just a simple NPC and asks how he could possibly drop items and rare treasures. The protagonist, noticing a strong resemblance between the catfish NPC and his cousin, wonders if it could actually be him or not. He then says, "Hey cousin." The fish NPC rushes toward the protagonist, grabs his legs, and crying, asks if he's really Liu Nian. The traitor couple starts laughing at the situation, because the fish NPC called the protagonist Big Cousin. Liu wonders why those two are always everywhere, but he ignores them and explains the situation to his cousin, along with the reason he entered the game. He asks where his father is. The cousin explains that he and the uncle fought some monsters until they reached level 20. But when they tried to change classes, something went wrong. Liu's father's transfer was successful, but he ended up being sent to Bibo Pool. The system said he is the reincarnation of Benpo Ben. Crying, the cousin begs Liu to save him. He explains that those people imprisoned him there and force him to play with the fish every day. Then, he suddenly stops speaking, frightened, and tells the protagonist to run. Something begins to rise from the water. It's a level 25 regional Hydra Dragon boss. The people nearby get excited to take down the regional boss. The protagonist, looking at the monster, says that originally, there wasn't supposed to be a Hydra there, and then he can only think of one thing. That monster must be from Shen Gongbao's group, which would be very dangerous. The people start advancing, and the Hydra boss stares them down, and, with a single blow, sends everyone flying. The protagonist's ex is shocked by the boss's power. After all, it was only supposed to be a mere level 25. The boss raises one of his hands and begins to drain the essence of everyone around. Laughing, he says that he was suppressed for 1,000 years, and that his strength was drastically reduced. With this essence, he will be able to regain his power. He continues absorbing everyone's essence until they are reduced to mere dry husks. He then orders his subordinates to capture the others and take them to his cave. His minions charge toward Liu and the others. The protagonist quickly grabs a scroll and activates 2 talismans to launch an attack. The scrolls envelop the attackers, who are eliminated within seconds. Liu turns to his cousin and asks him to pretend he's attacking the protagonist so he can escape. He promises he'll find a way to return and save him. The cousin agrees, and they begin to stage a fight. He shouts to the others that the credit is his for capturing the enemy. The protagonist's ex, in despair, asks how they're going to get out of that situation. Chao responds that he bought an electric fire cannon, and if his melee attacks don't work, he'll use it. He then draws the cannon and says he'll attack the boss directly. He does so, landing a direct hit, which causes everyone nearby to celebrate. Meanwhile, the protagonist and his cousin continue pretending to fight. Chow laughs, but the boss approaches him. Enraged, the Hydra declares that the attack failed. Chow looks up in fear, and the Hydra casts a spell on him, turning him into a girl. Confused, he doesn't understand why he was transformed. The boss says that his subordinates have been working too hard, and this would make things more interesting for them. The minions, excited, thank their leader for the great gift. Surrounded, Chow shouts for the monsters to back off, insisting that even though he's been turned into a woman, he's still a man. One of the monsters replies that some fish species can change from male to female, so it's fine. The protagonist's ex, seeing her current partner in that situation, wonders why they're going through all this, and remarks that she's never heard of such a mechanic in the game. The protagonist and his cousin even start to feel sorry for the two. The boss then looks back and thinks that Bembol should have finished the fight by now. Chow asks if the two are working together. The protagonist's ex responds that they're cousins and are acting in coordination. The boss then turns to them and unleashes a powerful attack. The protagonist tries to defend himself, but is thrown backward. His HP drops to 0 at that moment, and he realizes that even with that gear set, he could barely withstand the blow. If he gets hit again, he certainly won't survive. So he uses the ice incense he bought at the Baohua Tower auction, which rapidly restores HP. Even at the risk of having his identity exposed, he uses the king's treasure to attempt a teleport, knowing that if he doesn't get out of there, he'll die. He desperately wanted to take his cousin with him. The Hydra monster realizes that this is Emperor Shin, and casts a spell to cancel the protagonist's teleportation. Liu, seeing this, thinks that it's all over. Preparing all his items, Liu decides that he is going to fight and that he doesn't want to be eliminated there. The demon Hydra says he will capture the essence of that mortal emperor and then launches a direct attack toward Liu. Due to the speed of the attack, the protagonist thinks it's all over, but his cousin jumps in front of him, defending him. He turns and tells Liu to run, thanking him for coming there to save him. Seeing his cousin wounded, Liu begins to cry. He remembers the time when the two of them used to go to cyber cafes, and his little cousin would defend him. A stinky fish like this is overestimating itself. Then he turns to Liu, who has his head down, and tells him that it's his turn now. Filled with rage, Liu declares that he will eliminate the demon Hydra. The demon, mocking him, says that he is just a mere human, and that it would only take one finger to defeat him. But before the monster can say anything else, Liu pulls out his talismans. However, the demon grabs the scrolls and burns them. Even so, Liu charges forward and says it's not over yet. He then unleashes a triple wind strike. He begins to attack with all the items he has, and each blow removes 1% of the monster's HP. Hydra's minions wonder why their master is being overwhelmed by a human. One of them questions whether magical weapons can be used infinitely. A few remaining people watch from afar, silently and anxiously. The confident demon says that Liu will never be able to kill him, for there is a vast difference between humans and enlightened beings, a barrier Liu will never be able to cross. But Liu, focused, declares that the monster deserves to be eliminated. Hydra asks the protagonist how he dares to challenge him with a rusty sword. Suddenly, the monster realizes it cannot move. Consumed by hatred, Liu cuts him in half. Hydra's minions are shocked by the scene and can't believe Liu managed to strike their master. The people who were being captured begin to rejoice at the possible chance to escape. At that moment, Liu thinks that he has already used everything he got from the pig man. And even though that sword is not fully forged, its hardness would already be enough. Seeing his imminent defeat, Hydra unleashes a massive power, and a shockwave pushes Liu far away. Once again, his HP drops to nearly 0. Hydra, now in an even more terrifying form, tells the protagonist that he will show him the enormous difference between mortal humans and enlightened beings. Everyone on the beach starts celebrating Liu's possible victory over the monster, but Hydra's minions start laughing and say that those people are celebrating too early. Hydra begins to transform into water. Liu, confused by what he sees, watches as the monster starts returning to his original form. He then declares that he will no longer give any chances to the mortal emperor. Liu realizes that the demon had sacrificed one of its snake heads to forge a new one. The Hydra demon declares that humans, like bedbugs, can still hurt him, but even if he wipes them from the earth, the hatred in his heart will never fade. Then, he launches a powerful attack on the protagonist, who has no energy or means to defend himself. Suddenly, a light appears in the sky, and a voice is heard from above, shouting not to harm Lucia. The Hydra demon looks up, confused, and at that moment, a massive golden dragon descends from the heavens and quickly eliminates him. A system message appears, congratulating Liu for defeating the boss of the dark faction, and he levels up from 20 to 24. He looks to the sky and sees a man riding a winged beast. He wonders how this man managed to defeat the Hydra demon with a single strike. This man was Wen Zhong, the great teacher of the Yinshang dynasty, who after his death was granted the title of the Nine Heavens. Wen Zhong lands before the protagonist, kneels, and apologizes for not arriving in time to save him. However, he expresses great joy at meeting him again. At that moment, two other figures appear in the sky, and, with lightning descending straight from the clouds, eliminate all of the Hydra demon boss's minions. Two beams of light descend toward Liu and Wen Zhong. A man introduces himself as Zhang Guifang, claiming to be the commander of the Qinglong Passage and a great minister of the Shang dynasty. The protagonist is left speechless upon seeing him. The third man introduces himself as Zhang Kui, also from the Shang dynasty. The protagonist throws himself to the ground, realizing that all these men had died in the battle of the Shang dynasty. Then, he stands, thanks them for their help, and says that he'll be fine. At that moment, the protagonist's cousin cries out for help. Desperate, Liu asks the men if they can save him. Guifang holds the cousin and gives him a healing orb, telling the king not to worry. Once he takes the pill, he'll be healed and become human again. A few minutes later, the boy gets up, says he's fine, and confirms that he has returned to human form. Liu deeply thanks General Zheng, who replies that there's no need for gratitude, as what he did was a small gesture. Wen Zhong comments that the souls on the list must fulfill their duties. Zhang Kui adds that they are bound to that list and hopes that the emperor will soon ascend to the immortal realm and help them break their chains. Liu agrees and says he will train intensely to reach the highest level as quickly as possible. Wen Zhong warns him that His Highness mustn't think like that, as the path to cultivating immortality is long and each step must be taken carefully. Embarrassed, the protagonist says he was just speaking casually, but he does intend to level up quickly. Kui then asks what they should do with the remaining people nearby, and suggests eliminating them to preserve the identity of His Highness. The traitorous couple, desperate, insists they saw nothing, and Chao only wants his body back. Thinking through the situation, Liu concludes that if the three kill innocent people, they might be added to the list of names, which would be bad for them. He decides that erasing their memories would be better. The three exchange glances and say the king is wise. Then, the elder Zhong activates his magic, erases the memories of everyone on the beach, and reverses the Hydra King's spell on those people. They mount their flying beasts again, and, before departing, say that since the problem is resolved, they will leave before others arrive and discover their identities. Flying through the sky, they wish the protagonist success in his cultivation and hope he ascends to immortality as soon as possible. Liu turns to his cousin and says he must take care of something, but that his cousin can now return to the novice village and continue training. His cousin replies that he will work hard to match the protagonist's power. Somewhere beneath the waters, a palace appears. A wedding amulet begins to crack. A furious woman asks who was responsible for killing her beloved. This was Princess Wan Sheng, wife of the nine-headed Hydra. She leaves the palace and tells her attendants that she will be gone for some time. Angry, she vows to find out who did it, and to take revenge on whoever harmed her beloved. Returning to the protagonist, he realizes he forgot to inform Wen Zhong and the others about Gongbao's plans. So, he decides to go back and continue strengthening his body in the tomb with the concubines. Upon arrival, he shouts, announcing that he's back. The three concubines welcome him warmly. He asks them to stand and inquires about Daji's whereabouts. Mei explains that Daji had to go prepare the auricular fluid in the inner sanctuary. He then decides to continue strengthening his eyes, as he wasn't able to complete the process last time. He grabs the fourth concubine and runs off. After finishing the eye enhancement, he feels as though he can see everything clearly. Daji appears and says she had been waiting in the sanctuary the entire time. He hugs her and comments on how arduous the task is for her. At that moment, he sees a girl and asks who she is. The young woman introduces herself as Shui Ning. He turns to Daji and asks who she is. Daji responds that Shui Ning claims to be a demonic spirit from the East China Sea. She possesses a unique trait. She can grant someone the ability to hear all the subtle sounds in the world. Liu asks how he can acquire this ability, and Daji explains that Shui Ning's first blood is extremely precious and must be collected carefully and stored in a jade bottle. Sometime later, they manage to obtain the valuable item. The protagonist tells the girl that she worked hard and will be rewarded. She becomes emotional upon hearing this. Liu tells Daji they successfully extracted the liquid, and Daji tells him to lie down so she can perform the purification. He places his head on her lap, and she pours the liquid into his ear. Immediately, he feels a cold fluid flowing inside, and the sensation is like being in a fairy tale with little fairies singing and playing music, while the noise of the outside world fades away. Liu gets up and says that both his ears have been successfully strengthened. Then he asks Daji what else needs to be done to complete his body enhancement. She replies that everything is ready and asks him to follow her. When they arrive in the room where the others are, she asks if the linglong fruit is ready. Mei confirms and goes to retrieve it. Mei explains that this fruit can only be used once all 7 body points have been strengthened. She asks him to focus on his nostrils. Liu approaches, smells the fruit, and senses a refreshing ocean scent. Suddenly, spheres of light begin to surround him, and a bright light fills the room. A system message appears, congratulating Liu for having strengthened all the points of his body. The protagonist is overjoyed, as his abilities are now at their maximum level. He has become a complete player. The concubines congratulate him on this achievement. Liu thanks them for their help and promises to cultivate quickly so he can free them from the tomb as soon as possible. A system update notification appears. The protagonist taps it and, upon opening, sees a system alert along with possible rewards. Mei says these are the necessary materials to forge the Phoenix Sword. The protagonist becomes excited and declares that he will participate in the event to complete the sword quickly. Meanwhile, in the Valley of 10,000 Underworlds, the location of the upcoming event, a woman seeking revenge for the death of the Hydra demon remarks that Gongbao claimed the reincarnation of King Zhou and Wen Zhong were responsible. While she is not yet strong enough to face Wen Zhong, she feels confident she can eliminate the reincarnation of King Zhou. The day before, Princess Wansheng stood before Gongbao, asking who had done it. He replied that, at first, her husband had been watching over Bibo's pool, but they hadn't imagined that one of the players would be the reincarnation of the mortal king. He added that he was also very saddened by the loss. Seeing the young woman's sorrow, Gongbao said he had thought Wen Zhong would eliminate all the humans to ensure the secret of the mortal king was kept. But when he sent his men there, he saw that everyone was still alive. She then asked why he didn't just imprison all the humans and force them to reveal who the reincarnation of King Zhou was. Gongbao replied that it wouldn't be easy, as Wen Zhong had used magic to make everyone lose their memories, and that King Zhou had already fled. The princess then remarked that it seemed King Zhou was very cautious and would not reveal himself easily in the future. Gongbao told her not to worry, for the next day a great dungeon would open in the Wanming Valley, filled with many rare items. He was certain the king would be interested. Gongbao approached her and said that the blood of the human emperor was very important, and if she helped him, she would be rewarded with something very precious. She then turned around and said she would go to the dungeon. As she walked away, Gongbao thought about his entire plan and decided to let the princess pave the way for now. Then, he wished her good luck. Returning to the present moment, Princess Wansheng decides to disguise herself as an ordinary player to find out who the emperor is. Sometime later, the protagonist arrives at the location. He decides not to use the Phoenix longsword this time, so as not to be discovered, since the dungeon battle will attract many people. He then says he will gather a few items first. He takes out his phone and calls the pigman. The pigman answers, asking what Professor Liu Nian wants. Liu says he wants to buy some items to enter the dungeon. The little man replies that he'll send some new items so the protagonist can see if anything catches his interest. Liu thinks that since he can't use the sword, he'll pick a few items to replace it. Liu then pulls out his card and says he wants 50 of each item. The pigman confirms that he will send the items quickly. When the protagonist looks up, he sees a flying pig, and a system message appears saying his items have arrived. Upon opening the chests, the pigman explains that he sent a few extra intelligence items for the protagonist to use in daily life. The protagonist simply thanks him. Before hanging up, the pigman asks if there's anything else beyond the book he gave Liu. Liu replies that he's been very busy lately, but when he has time, he'll check if there's anything more. At that moment, Miss Fang arrives from behind the protagonist and asks if that's where he was. Liu turns around and says he was looking for her father, apologizing for it. She then asks if what she gave him was enough. Embarrassed, the protagonist asks if she'll also be joining the dungeon and who the people with her are. Fang Qie responds that they are her friends, Shu Meijiao and Shu, and they are looking for people to form their team. Meijiao asks if Fang knows that man. The girl replies that Liu is the fiancé of the Fang family and that he is very strong, suggesting they take him with them into the dungeon. Meijiao asks if he is Fang's husband, and she replies that he is just her fiancé. Liu then introduces himself and thinks that the people brought by Fang wouldn't be a problem. Shu says that the team needs a control mage, but that guy is just a level 24 adventurer who hasn't even chosen a class yet, so he'd be nothing but a burden. Meijiao says she doesn't understand how Fang Qie could have chosen him. The protagonist, looking at the two of them, wonders why they hate him so much. Another person appears, asking if she could join the team since there are still few members. It's a beautiful mage. Fang, upon looking at her, realizes she'd be the ideal addition to the group. Shu says the team lacks mages, and Meijiao states that since they're a team, they'll share the items equally. The supposed mage throws herself onto Liu and asks if he's ever been to Bibo's pool. With the power of his forged eyes, the protagonist sees who the woman really is. He answers that he has never heard of it. Knowing that she can sense his thoughts, he starts thinking of random things to confuse her. She then suddenly moves away from Liu and says he's a very strange guy. Annoyed, she says she has analyzed several men that day and none of them are any good. If she weren't afraid of the celestial patrols, she would have eliminated them all already. Fang grabs Liu's arm and asks why the woman is trying to seduce her fiancé. The protagonist apologizes and says they now need to focus on the dungeon. The woman then asks them to wait. Since they're short on mages, she requests to join the dungeon too. But deep down, she's plotting to eliminate everyone inside. Meanwhile, at the entrance of the Wanming Valley event, several players were gathered. A celestial being announced that the event was now open and that players could proceed to the dungeon. This being was Zhang Guifeng, who held the title of Star of Misfortune. He then became enraged and declared that one day he would put an end to the list of the gods and rid himself of that title once and for all. Soon after, the entrance portal to the dungeon appeared, and the players rushed in to try and grab the rare, limited-quantity items. Guifeng, while observing Liu's team, noticed a different aura emanating from the supposed mage and stated that he needed to investigate. As he tried to leave his post as a gatekeeper at the dungeon entrance, someone appeared, asking where he was going. It was Huang Tianxiang, the Master Star, who said that a misfortunate star dared to call him by name. Guifeng replied that he wasn't afraid, and then the Master Star said he would show him the consequences of such defiance. At that moment, a voice interrupted the argument, yelling for the two to stop. The person continued, saying that this fight had lasted for thousands of years and that they still hadn't moved past it. He reminded them that they all now served heaven and must protect the world's order. Tianxiang bowed and said the third son was right, then left the scene. Meanwhile, Guifeng explained that he had seen a monster disguised as a player entering the dungeon and wanted to investigate but was stopped by Tianxiang. The third son responded that he had recently heard reports of monsters invading that small world and asked Guifeng to remain on guard there, as he himself would go inside the dungeon to investigate. Then, he quickly entered. Meanwhile, somewhere inside the dungeon, the protagonist and his team were passing through. Fang remarked that before entering the dungeon, there had been many people, but now, after entering, only a few remained. She asked what could be happening, and Liu replied that the dungeon had a unique system of random elimination at various points, and only those who reached the deepest layers could participate in the battle against the boss. Looking back, he thought that Princess Wansheng had stopped listening to him and had only entered because of the celestial guards and because Fang had argued with her outside. She probably didn't dare to read his mind again. He then explained that upon entering the dungeon, he tried to move as slowly as possible so Guifang would sense something was wrong. If he had revealed the princess's presence on his own, his ability to see real monsters would have been discovered by the enemies. His plan at the moment was to check if there were any more real monsters around. If they were just NPCs and were eliminated, they would reappear somewhere. But if it was a real monster, it would definitely have to be attacked directly. In the corridor ahead, Liu noticed that everyone there was just an NPC. Mei Zhao said she would lure some monsters so the mage could freeze and eliminate them. Shu suggested she use a blizzard to slow down the enemies. The mage stated that she would fight them now but would later eliminate all of them in the lower levels of the dungeon. Fang then asked everyone to be careful, as a new wave of monsters was about to appear. A large army appeared before them. Fang rushed forward to attack and demonstrate his new cultivation level. Shu and Mei Zhao also moved in to fight, while the mage attacked some NPCs with a hailstorm. Fang shouted that the attack was going well and that they would soon be able to handle the entire army. The protagonist decided that this would be the right time to try using the exorcist potion he had bought before entering the dungeon. However, even after the attacks, Liu noticed that the monsters kept appearing. The girls then realized that it wasn't an exorcist potion, but rather a monster-attracting potion. The mage appeared before them and quickly defeated all the monsters. The girls were overjoyed and praised the mage in various ways. After the thanks, the mage replied that it was just her job. But deep down, she thought she couldn't let the NPCs eliminate them, as they would respawn, and she wouldn't be able to drain their essence. Mei Zhao and Shu were furious with the protagonist, as he had nearly ruined everything. Fang pulled him away from them and said he had only used the item without realizing it was wrong, apologizing on his behalf. Then Fang told Liu to be more careful next time and read what the potion said. Liu agreed and apologized. Mei Zhao said she would let it slide this time, but next time, Liu would be expelled from the team. Shou called the mage to hurry up and told her not to pay attention to that idiot. Some time had passed, and they were walking around the area. Fang said that the deeper they went, the more likely it was for powerful monsters to appear. She then warned everyone to be careful. At that very moment, a spider appeared before them. Smiling, it said it had found some prey. The spider turned, unleashed its power, and declared that it would devour them to gain more strength. It then stole the weapons of Fang, Shu, and Mei Zhao. The protagonist launched several flame talismans, but the spider, laughing, said that a few pieces of paper wouldn't be enough to destroy it. It told them to surrender and become its food. Then, it cast its web over the four of them, which made Mei Zhao very angry. She told Liu to step back. Desperate, the protagonist said it wasn't his fault, and Fang urged him to think of something quickly, like he had done before. The princess then declared that she would use a great power to eliminate the spider as it dared to interfere with her business. With a single blow, she drained all of the spider monster's HP. The three of them celebrated their victory over the monster, and the entrance to the boss appeared before them. Lin stepped in front of Fang and asked them to go in first, which left Fang confused. Then the princess revealed herself and said they wouldn't be going anywhere. Shu and Mei Zhao question Liu about why he is blocking the passage of the mage sister. Liu turns to them and asks if they are idiots. A level 26 mage defeating a boss with a single blow? Then, he reveals that this mage is a monster who invaded that world, and that if she eliminates them, they will not come back to life. That is why he wants them to run to the boss room, so they will be eliminated, and then respawn. At that moment, the princess reveals herself and creates a barrier so that no one can escape. Mei Zhao says she learned from her family that by playing this game, one can become immortal. But she has never heard of demons. She asks if those NPCs were not created by Jiangxia, and if they do not harm the players. Shu recalls that one of her relatives sent her a message yesterday about this, but she did not expect to face a real monster today. Fang tells Liu that he misunderstood and that she will help him eliminate this demon and will reward him afterward. Shu and Mei Zhao also admit that they misunderstood and apologize. They say that if he manages to eliminate the demon, they will do anything for him. Shu grabs her weapon and shouts for everyone to use all their abilities, otherwise they will not survive. She hopes that what Fang said about Liu is true, and that he is really strong. At that moment, the mage attacks them head-on and says, "You ants, do you really think you can touch me, Princess Wansheng? You are seeking death." Then she unleashes a powerful attack towards them, causing almost all of the girls' HP to drop. Mei Zhao asks if this is the true power of a demon. The protagonist is impressed because just a single hand movement was able to cause so much damage to Fang and the others. The princess then says that any human who dares to insult her will be eliminated, and launches ice spears toward the protagonist. He uses one of the items he bought from the pigman, and a huge shield appears over them. Liu turns to them and says that monsters of her level cannot be fought by ordinary players. He asks them to stay behind the shield and not do anything rash. Once again, Princess Wansheng attacks them directly, trying to break the shield. Liu talks to Fang and says that if everyone stays there, sooner or later the shield will not hold. So, he decides to leave and fight the demon. Fang replies that he should not leave, and that she wants to fight too. Liu, with a serious look, says that he saw she cannot withstand the princess's attacks, and that if she leaves the shield now, she will only get in his way. Upon hearing this, Fang is shocked, starts crying, and says that from now on she will live and die for him, as she is already his real wife. Liu leaves the shield, looking back, and says it's all right. The other girls become desperate because if Liu cannot eliminate the demon, it will be the end for everyone. The princess, facing the protagonist, says they don't need to worry because she will finish them all together, and soon will absorb their energy until the very end. At that moment, from a higher place, the third brother watches them. He finds it interesting that a human is not afraid of the demon princess and wants to see the fight and how long it will last. The princess launches an ice attack toward Liu, who uses his stealth ability to dodge all the attacks. He then turns around, throws talismans, and uses his immobilization technique. After capturing her, he unleashes his fireball skill and then activates his ninja ability, attacking from multiple angles at the same time. The girls, seeing this, think it will all be useless since Liu's highest skill level is 4, and that won't be enough to fight the princess. The third brother, watching from afar, says it's really like that. He would need to have skills at level 20 to affect a demon like her. But suddenly, he is shocked, and wonders how this happened. The princess had taken a lot of damage at that moment. Fang also wonders how the damage was so high and how her man is so strong, which makes her enchanted by it. Shu and Mei Zhao regain hope in an imminent defeat of the demon, and the two girls think they were really wrong. Falling backward, the princess thinks these insects can really hurt her. She then asks how a player with level 4 skills could cause so much damage. Liu, confident, replies, "Who said my skill level is only 4? I'm not an ordinary jobless player." The princess says that doesn't matter and that she will eliminate him right there. She then uses her purple dragon dance technique, which makes the third brother apprehensive. Fang shouts for her husband to be careful, and so do the girls. Liu thought, at that moment, that the attack was so powerful that if he hid behind any defensive barrier, it could end up hurting Fang and the others. But Fang told him to catch something and threw an item to the protagonist. Liu grabbed the speed item and quickly moved away from the attack, causing the dragons to chase him into the sky. The princess said it was useless because anyone hit by her purple dragon dance would be definitively eliminated. She then turned to the girls and stated that after eliminating Liu, she would take them all to her castle, and, after the guards were done with them, she would drain them. Shu and Mei Zhao hugged each other, terrified, saying it was all over. Fang told them to trust Liu, saying he would definitely defeat the princess. At that moment, one of the dragons struck Liu's backside, making him scream loudly. Fang, looking back, said it was nothing serious, just a small mistake. She insisted that they couldn't just stand there, and that when they got a chance, they should use their weapons to attack and help Liu. Meanwhile, the protagonist kept dodging the dragons. Irritated, the princess asked if he was a rat, running away like that. Flying at high speed, Liu eventually took damage. The girls wondered what had happened because he was losing a lot of HP. The princess explained that her dragon was highly venomous and that after biting the protagonist, the poison had started to spread. Liu said it didn't matter because he still had healing pills. As he approached the princess, he wondered if the wings he was using had some special ability. Then he remembered something the princess had said. Anyone hit by the purple dragons would surely die. He decided to try something and activated a rare ability of the wings, speeding past the princess and positioning himself behind her. Liu was now sure that the Wind Thunder Wings had rare and valuable abilities. He grabbed the princess, making the dragons turn against her. The princess screamed desperately until she was hit directly, and Liu was thrown far away. With that, the demon princess was eliminated, and the barrier she had placed around everyone disappeared. Fang and the others celebrated the victory. The third brother, seeing all that, was surprised by the protagonist's power and intelligence. A system message appeared, congratulating the player for defeating Princess Wan Sheng. As a reward, he received a Stygian ice stone. The protagonist remembered that this stone was one of the materials used to activate the Fang sword. At that moment, the girls ran to Liu. Chu asked if he didn't want to be her family's son-in-law, and Mei Zhao asked if he wanted to be her master. Fang pushed them away and told them to get out of her way because Liu was already the Fang family's son-in-law. She then kissed him and thanked him for saving her, but said she now needed to show that he belonged to her, which left the other girls very annoyed. Sometime later, Liu said that everyone needed to heal before entering the boss level. Using healing potions, everyone quickly recovered. The third brother appeared at that moment and commented that, for a level 20 player with no profession, defeating Princess Wan Sheng was quite impressive. Liu stood in front of Fang once again and asked who that man was. The man responded by asking if they really couldn't recognize him in those clothes. After analyzing the items, everyone was shocked and identified him as the third prince, Neja. He approached the protagonist and said he had just watched the battle, praising Liu's talent. Neja asked if Liu wanted to be his little brother, promising to protect him from now on. Liu wondered, at that moment, if Prince Neja was gay. Landing a blow on the protagonist, the prince asked if no one had warned Liu that he shouldn't think strange things in front of the gods. Liu then fell to the ground, and everyone wondered what had happened. Fang knelt before the prince and said that Liu still didn't know the game's etiquette, apologizing for that. The prince sat down beside Liu and said that he hadn't hurt him, but that since Liu had been bitten by the purple dragon, the poison was spreading. If not treated, Liu wouldn't survive and would lose his life. The girls then recalled what had happened. Fang, crying, asked if Prince Nejan had the antidote. The prince replied that he did, but with this method, he would only be able to remove the poison from Liu's body. Liu would still need to take a golden potion to treat his body afterward. Fang asked what she could do to help with that. The prince answered that it would be very simple. The three of them needed to work together to gather true energy in their mouths and then lick the wound. The true energy would eliminate the purple dragon's poison. The girls became completely embarrassed just imagining that. Mei Jiao asked what would happen if they missed the location of the wound. Xu said that since he had saved their lives, they should help him remove the poison from his body. The three of them then came together at that moment, channeling their energies. The prince looked back and said he could feel the energy of 3 ancient spirits within those girls and that they were probably their descendants. Mei Jiao asked Fang not to get jealous because she couldn't control herself very well when doing something like that. Prince Nejan scolded them, asking them to hurry. He told Fang to remove the equipment from Liu's lower body so it wouldn't get in the way of the process. But when she tried to remove it, a light suddenly emerged from the protagonist's body, and a great golden dragon came out of him. The girls saw a large gold bar and wondered why Liu would keep something like that in such a place. The prince explained that it wasn't a gold bar but one of Liu's vital points that had been worked, refined, and polished. Fang told the prince not to just stand there and to hurry up and save Liu. Then they all gathered to channel their energy over the dragon bite, and the poison began to be purified. Mei Jiao thought that the protagonist's body was truly majestic, and agreed with the prince, saying that soon he would be able to perform dual cultivation. Xu, on the other hand, said they should quickly clean the poison and not look around. Meanwhile, the protagonist regained consciousness and asked if the 4 of them could train together. The girls then hit him right on the bite, and as he fell back to the ground, they asked if he was okay. The prince said that, at the moment, it didn't matter because he would recover after drinking the golden potion. Thus, the protagonist was completely healed. The prince commented that Liu had really been lucky to meet him, and that now, Liu would be his little brother. Before the protagonist could say anything, the prince stated that he would refuse such a title and that he only wanted to help him. Then he turned and threw something to the protagonist, explaining that it would be his basic technique, the golden magic brick. With so many powerful women at his side, he would never lack bricks. Then the prince said he would leave because he needed to check another place. He opened a portal and entered. But before closing it, he threw one more item to the protagonist. He said that if anyone dared to bother him in the future, he should just show that lotus seal, encouraging the protagonist to train his cultivation well, because he would be waiting for him. Liu turned to pick up the seal and wondered how he would show it. Flying through the sky after leaving the scene, Prince Nejan thought that, during his patrol, he had found the child his mother had asked him to take care of. But, besides that, he had witnessed something very interesting and amusing. He believed that Liu had great potential. He then recalled the moment when his mother asked him to look after the child, Liu Nian. Nejan thought that now the protagonist would be protected by the lotus mark, and if anything dangerous happened to him, the mark would shield him. He then decided to continue patrolling, as a group of rats had sneaked into the small world of that game and needed to be cleared out. Meanwhile, in the Wanming Valley, inside the final boss room, some members of the Yuming Guild appeared. One of them, Jiang Ziwen, commented that he had recently learned that a true demon had infiltrated that game and asked his master to be cautious. The guild leader, Xiao Yanmo, replied that it was fine. They were descendants of the Fengdu underworld emperor, and that they could handle a few small fish. Looking ahead, some red eyes appeared. Two mage sisters stood before Yanmo and asked him to be careful. They were Xuanshihei and Bai, also members of the Yuming Guild. Some zombies appeared in the distance, and the two sisters activated their abilities, saying that as long as they were there, no one would get close to their master. One of the zombies roared, causing many others to appear. Jiang Ziwen then activated his sword technique and unleashed it on the zombie horde. Someone suddenly appeared, clapping. Hong Chao, a member of the Xingchen Guild. In the game world there were many guilds, but 6 of them were the most prominent. Another member of the Xingchen Guild commented that he had checked their guild ranking and saw it was just a small guild with 6 members. Hong Chao laughed at that, as indeed, there were only 6 members. Looking at the girls, he introduced himself and said he liked them. He thought this small, newly founded guild would be happy to join theirs, and that later he would try to recruit the 2 sisters. He then said that if they came with him, the items would be distributed equally. The other Xingchen Guild members said that being part of something led by Chief Hong was a great opportunity for the girls, and that by joining their guild they would receive many benefits. They then started flattering their vice president even more. However, Yan Mo became very irritated with the situation involving his subordinates, but he refrained from attacking, as Xuanshihei and Bai were already rejecting the man's offer. Curled up on the floor in fear, Hong asked what they were doing with the vice leader of a major guild. One of the Xingchen Guild members became very angry that the girls had refused to join Chief Hong and said he regretted not being born a woman, until a golden brick struck him on the head. Hiding behind his subordinates, Hong asked who had dared to launch a surprise attack on someone from such a renowned guild. Yan Mo simply observed in silence until Liu appeared, smiling, and said that it seemed the technique he had just learned wasn't quite perfect yet. He added that his golden brick hadn't hit a big animal but rather a small fish. Hong asked who the protagonist was and requested that he not get involved. Preparing more bricks, Liu replied that he was someone who liked to defend justice, then launched his bricks. Turning to the members of the Yuming Guild, Liu thought that this guild ranking might not be very reliable, so he used his Fire Eyes technique to analyze them. He realized that they all possessed a special ability from the city of Fengdu. He remembered reading in the book given to him by the Lady of the Baoa Tower that people from that city had special abilities that allowed them to summon beasts and even ancient heroic spirits. For such people, raising their guild rank would only be a matter of time. Meanwhile, the Xingchen Guild members were rolling on the ground. Hong got up and told them not to be afraid, as that technique cost a lot of money, and he wanted to see how much the protagonist was willing to spend. But Fang Qie appeared and asked, "Is that really the case?" stating that she was from the Fang group. Mei Zhao said she belonged to the Tang Dynasty restaurant group, and Shui said she was from a martial arts center whose family provided unlimited funds for Liu Fang. And so, the crazy and rich group of Liu Nian's girlfriends was formed. Chief Hong and his members were shocked to hear which families they belonged to. One of them even said those families were the most prominent. Liu prepared himself and said sarcastically, "What are you going to hit this time?" Then he threw one of his golden bricks at one of Hong's subordinates, who got angry with the protagonist and asked him not to be so ignorant. Confident, Liu replied that even if he was blessed by rich families, this was the game world, and having a large guild was an advantage. The protagonist threw a brick at each of the members who appeared, causing some to respawn and Hong to fall to the ground. People around were frightened and believed Liu would face retaliation for that. On the other hand, Liu just thought he had spent a lot of money using that technique and started picking up equipment dropped by other players to try to sell and make money from it. Fang told him not to keep collecting trash and said she was happy to be able to give him money. Mei Zhao said it didn't matter how much she spent on him, as long as Liu trained hard and reached the saint body. Shu ran to hug Liu and said that if he were her family's son-in-law, he would earn millions or even billions, which made Fang very irritated, telling Shu not to steal Liu Nian from her. Embarrassed, Liu wondered if this was what it was like to be fought over by rich women. The Shuangxia sisters thanked the protagonist for the help, and Liu said it was okay. Yanmo approached, introduced herself, and also thanked him. Liu then introduced himself and said the girls were all members of his team. Yanmo started analyzing the protagonist, noticing he didn't have a profession yet, but had an immortal-level skill. Despite a complex identity, she decided Liu was someone worthy of friendship. Then, both simultaneously asked each other if they wanted to join forces to defeat the boss. They sealed the partnership with a handshake. One of Yanmo's subordinates said they would have some difficulty resisting the boss's attacks because they had no members who could withstand them. Liu replied that this was easy to solve and explained that since the dungeon allowed a maximum of 10 people per team, they just needed to recruit 2 tanks. Fang offered money to any 2 tanks interested, and immediately several candidates appeared before the protagonist. Then Hong appeared again and said he wanted to see who would dare to join them. Anyone who accepted to join Liu would be blacklisted by the guild and eliminated every time they were seen. He reminded everyone that he had the best ninja on the server, making it hard to escape him. Confident, Hong thought anyone who messed with the Xingchen guild would be eliminated at any moment. The men gave up joining Liu's team because of that. Fang still insisted on finding someone and said she would pay the amount immediately, but the men kept refusing to join the team. Hong provoked Fang, saying it wouldn't help because if they were eliminated, they wouldn't get to enjoy the money. Mei Zhao and Shu were also outraged and said they would make Hong pay for that by hunting him everywhere. Confident, Hong said the threat of rich people in that world was irrelevant compared to the number of members his guild had, as it would only take a little effort to end them. Liu, who didn't mind not having a tank, had already thought of something that could even break the dungeon completion record. He believed he was the strongest there, even without a class, and that he could withstand the attacks easily. The men were stunned hearing Liu and then started laughing and mocking him. Yanmo approached the protagonist, said she believed in him, and invited him to try. At that moment, Hong proposed a bet. If the protagonist's team passed the dungeon, he would kneel and salute everyone and would not let his guild members bother them. But if the team lost, the 2 sisters would have to join his guild. Irritated, Yanmo said that was impossible. Hong began mocking Yanmo, saying he claimed to trust Liu and now didn't want to accept the bet. Then, he told them to join the Xingchen guild soon, as they had the best tanks. At that moment, a tank with huge and powerful armor arrived. His name was Fan Wencheng, level 28, and a member of the Xingchen guild. Hong held him up as an example, saying it had been only a few days since Wencheng joined the guild and became one of the strongest tanks on the beginner team. Liu threw one of his bricks at the tank and said he was just another one among many. Wencheng activated his shield, but the brick went through his defense and hit him directly, destroying the man's equipment. Angry, Hong said he would make sure Liu wouldn't leave the safe zone unharmed. Yanmo advised Liu not to mess with Hong's guild because they had the best assassin ninja. Liu replied that he didn't like people who used their influence for evil. Yanmo said she wanted to accept the bet so they could clear the dungeon on their own, believing in the protagonist's power and ability to complete the dungeon. Then Yanmo turned to Hong and accepted the proposal. The man agreed and said that if he didn't fulfill it, he would be struck by lightning and die without resurrecting. Suddenly, Hong was struck by lightning, leaving others confused. Yanmo smiled slyly, as he was responsible for it. At that moment, the protagonist decided to try to break the record since Yanmo had accepted the bet. He wanted to raise his reputation there, and so they entered the boss room. Confident, Hong believed that without tanks, they wouldn't pass the dungeon, and that afterward, he would have many ways to make those sisters kneel before him. Upon entering the boss room, Yanmo says that, based on what he has observed, the boss will launch a powerful attack every 30 seconds, and if you're not a tank, you'll die within seconds. So, it's better to stay safe and have more than one tank on the team. He asks them to take turns using a life-saving skill to endure the boss's moves. Liu replies to Yanmo not to worry because when the boss attacks for the first time, his greatest skill is damage resistance. Yanmo says that our protagonist's skill is only level 4, and that he will need someone to heal him. So, he offers to heal our protagonist, since he can change class to a healer or summoner. Embarrassed, Yanmo says he will be Brother Liu's healer. The protagonist hugs Yanmo and says that, anyway, he will be able to heal himself. But besides clearing the dungeon, he wants to break the completion time record. Once again embarrassed, Yanmo says everyone will hear what Liu says. He then summons one of his beasts and says he will send a minion to draw the boss's attention. A laugh is heard, and everyone shouts that the boss is coming. A system message appears asking if they want to watch the boss's animation. Liu decides to watch to try to find clues to defeat the boss. He accepts, and the animation starts playing. A woman appears before the boss. Xiaoqian and Kaichen were lovers, and the two, along with the old demon of the Black Mountain, were from Liaozhai. The girl, crying, calls for her beloved, but the boss holds her captive and doesn't let her go. Yanmo and Liu are very interested in the animation, but meanwhile, the girls are quite annoyed. Liu then stops the animation and says there are no more clues to see and decides to start right away. The protagonist feels completely embarrassed at that moment and thinks Zhang Xian must be suspicious and made this game inadequately. Seconds later, the boss appears surrounded by purple mist. The protagonist observes him using his vision technique and tells the others that this is just an NPC, that he has experience fighting attack bosses, and asks everyone to listen to what he says. The protagonist advances toward the boss while guiding his teammates. He uses immobilization talismans he bought from the pigman, and turns around, thinking he's generated enough hatred for the boss to come after him. The other team members start attacking from afar. Fang and Mei Zhao advance since they use swords. Yanmo also advances, using his sword technique. He asks Liu if he really doesn't need healing. The protagonist says no and asks him to check his rejuvenation skill. Liu activates a shield, and the boss hits it head-on. Yanmo and his subordinate are shocked by the level of our protagonist's rejuvenation skill. The protagonist says that's not the only skill he has, but also the sacred word. Fang comments at that moment that Liu is very strong and that they will keep doing their best work. Liu shouts for the melee attackers to spread out because the boss is about to make a big attack. And so he does, smashing the ground with full force, causing our protagonist to activate his full defense. The boss hits him and throws him far away. The attack takes 50% of Liu's life, but he quickly heals himself and says the first wave of mountain demons has passed, asking everyone to keep going. Everyone agrees. Minutes pass, and they keep attacking with all the strength they have. The sixth wave has passed, and Liu is using his bell shield skill, which he bought from the pigman. The boss prepares an attack, turns to the others, and hits them all in the back. The protagonist activates a cleric skill, and places healing shields around the other team members. The sisters think this shield managed to save them from the boss's skill, and even though the shield reduces damage by 30%, if they suffer another attack, they will all be eliminated. To save his companions, Yanmo activates a healing skill. Liu thinks that from this sixth wave on, the boss must be entering the second stage. Having seen his father complete these dungeons as a tank, while the team was completely destroyed, he believes he will have no problem with it. Yanmo says that even though Liu is strong, without a profession, he's just a strong person inside the game. But Yanmo can invoke powers outside the game's structure, and that's why he dared to make the bet. Yanmo begins to summon a powerful beast, and a giant symbol appears. Then, a beast starts to emerge from inside the circle. The sisters, seeing this, become worried about their master because if the summoning of this spiritual beast fails, it will backfire and damage the bloodline talent. Our protagonist is both confused and surprised, wondering what is going on. A gigantic beast appeared before Yanmo. It let out a roar so powerful that everyone felt an overwhelming pressure. The Shu sisters collapsed to the ground as the pressure nearly made their hearts stop. Magi said that this was, without a doubt, the true divine beast. The protagonist was deeply impressed by this divine beast, Shimeji, and by Yanmo's talent for actually managing to summon it. But the beast turned toward Yanmo, analyzed him, and then descended upon him furiously, saying that it was this little boy who had summoned its first form. One of Yanmo's subordinates stepped in front of him and said he didn't know that his young master was already capable of summoning Shimeji. Yanmo replied that he had been a bit weakened, and that affected him. The sisters knelt and bowed before Shimeji, welcoming him and asking for his help. Meanwhile, on the other side of the battlefield, the fight was still going on. The boss was still attacking the protagonist, who kept using his bell-shaped shield and hoping his skills would come off cooldown soon. As the boss delivered a series of consecutive attacks, the protagonist realized that the second phase was very difficult, and breaking the record wouldn't be easy at all. He shouted for everyone to keep going, and the girls prepared to return to battle. Yanmo tried to calm and persuade the divine beast, saying he had prepared something for it. Shimeji asked if the boy was trying to bribe her, and then Yanmo revealed a delicious and shiny chicken drumstick. He said he had specially prepared some for Master Shimeji, and if that wasn't enough, he had made more. Shimeji couldn't resist the temptation, grabbed the drumstick, and said she would help only because Yanmo was a descendant of Emperor Fengdu. But just this once, she tossed the drumstick into her mouth and commented on how delicious it was. At that moment, the boss landed a hit on Liu, who said it hurt a lot. His HP wasn't recovering on its own, and he would need to use a potion. He then decided to show what a full-time player with no class restrictions could do, launching a powerful flame attack toward the boss. At that point, Yanmo asked Shimeji to intervene in the fight. The beast replied that there was no rush, as the enemy was merely a puppet from a game created by Jiang Xia. She added that humans were indeed weak. However, as she turned to Liu, something caught her attention. Shimeji sensed the scent of an emperor on the protagonist. She then began using her technique, and a huge golden object formed in the sky. The boss noticed the movement, looked up, and the object fell upon him, smashing him into the ground. Shimeji approached the boss and was even surprised. These puppets looked quite realistic. She turned to the others and said she wouldn't help eliminate the boss entirely, because if it were discovered she would be punished by the gods. She told them to take care of the remaining 10%. Liu wasted no time and told everyone to attack with everything they had. Everyone obeyed. The sisters channeled their fire and ice powers. Fang urged everyone to hurry so they could break the record, and Magi and Shu launched themselves at the boss, using all their special techniques. With attacks coming from all sides at once, the boss's HP dropped to 0. Then, a system message appeared outside the boss room, announcing that the dungeon had been cleared by Liu's team. The traitor and Chao, who were outside, were irritated by yet another victory from the protagonist. Some people nearby got excited, while others grew annoyed by the achievement, especially since they had no healer or tank and were only 8 people. Frustrated, Hong said that Liu Nian had once again ruined his plans, and added that he wouldn't let Liu escape so easily. He turned to his subordinates and ordered them to call everyone so they could eliminate the group and steal their treasures. One subordinate tried to remind Hong of the promise he had made, but in a fit of rage, Hong told the man to obey without questioning. He then drew a knife and said he was a bad person, and that one should never trust what a bad person says. Finally, he declared that the Shuangsha sisters would be his. Still inside the instance, the girls ran to hug Liu Nian. They were very happy for having completed the dungeon. At that moment, everyone received various rewards, and the protagonist wondered what that green helmet of Ning Kaichen was. According to the item info, it greatly increased defense against players below level 50, and also activated a special ability that could block a fatal blow. The protagonist thought the helmet was quite strong. The only problem was its extravagant color. Yanmo thanked Shimeji for the help and said he was very grateful. Before leaving, the beast warned him not to be so careless, and said she had noticed his great talent. Because of that, she believed they would meet again often. She then said her goodbyes and stepped into the portal. The Shuangsha sisters also bid farewell to the giant divine beast. Looking at the beast walking away, Liu said he wanted to divide the items. He wanted to keep the materials and the helmet and said he would pay for them. Yanmo replied that brother Liu was really strong and could have handled the boss alone. He then said the protagonist could take whatever he wanted, and the rest would be shared or drawn among the others. He believed no one there would mind. Liu's enthusiastic girlfriends quickly said they didn't care. The protagonist replied that he would do so because he needed to save his father. He then began collecting the necessary items to activate the Phoenix Sword and others. He thought to himself that he owed them all a favor, and that he would open the newbie gifts and the lottery box once he returned to the Zhuanyuan tomb. Yanmo told Liu not to hesitate to take the items, as just meeting a player like him was already the greatest reward. After a while, Fang called everyone to leave the dungeon, and so they did, following toward the portal. Back in the antechamber, people started talking about Liu and his team, and that the Xingchen Guild was gathering to come and fight for the items. The protagonist then came across Hong and some people at his side. Hong threatened the protagonist, saying that if he didn't hand over the items and rewards they got in the dungeon, he wouldn't let them leave. He told his subordinates that Liu's team must be tired from fighting the boss and ordered everyone to attack. Annoyed, Liu asked if they were trying to take advantage of other people's exhaustion. Fang said she, Chu, and Mei Zhao would hold them off and told the protagonist to run. Mocking him, Hong asked if the protagonist was trying to run away and said it wouldn't be that easy. Until suddenly, a lightning bolt struck from the sky once again. Yanmo, who was behind the protagonist, watched Hong and thought that he had already placed a curse, and if Hong broke the oath, he would be eliminated. Hong was struck by another bolt of lightning, this time much stronger, which incinerated and eliminated him. His guild members tried casting ice magic to soften the lightning's powerful impact, but it was too late. Hong fell to his knees, and his body began to fade away. Watching it happen, Yanmo thought that the fire he had summoned wasn't even pure, and that if it had been his mother, she would have reduced Hong to nothing. Hong's guild members wondered if he had been permanently eliminated and decided to check his in-game status. Since he was eliminated in a no-teleport zone, his body remained there. This left them shocked, as it meant the Vice Guild Master had truly been permanently deleted. One man then said this could only be the work of true demons. Startled, the people nearby asked what he meant by that. The man began explaining that once, someone from his guild had disappeared at Bibo Pool, and their leader discovered the game was actually a mix of fantasy and reality. The sisters from the Xingchen Guild said that those who break their oaths will be punished and burned to death, and that Hong got exactly what he deserved. People around turned to them and started running, claiming they were conspiring with demons and that they would report it to the game's GM. The protagonist covered his face and said it looked like they now had a problem. Yanmo apologized for having caused trouble for Liu and the girls, and said he would clarify things with the god in charge of that area and accept whatever consequences may come. Liu said it wouldn't be a problem, because if the god in charge was Zhang Guifang or Neja, he would speak with them himself. Yanmo warned the protagonist not to use the gods' names in vain, saying it was disrespectful. The protagonist approached him and replied that it was fine, since he knew them, but asked that this not be revealed to anyone. One of the sisters commented that, even if Liu was powerful, there was no way he could know the gods. Chu got irritated and said that just because the other sister had bigger breasts, it didn't mean she had to be so arrogant and speak that way about Liu Nian. Sarcastically, the woman replied, "Yes, they are bigger," and asked if she was jealous. Mei Zhao then asked if they were about to have a breast battle, and so the four melons gathered for an unusual contest. One of the sisters stares at Fang and says that a mere mortal like her couldn't possibly know Prince Neja. Fang, mocking, asks if she's jealous because her master never met the prince. The other sister replies that Fang speaks without knowing, since her master is a descendant of Emperor Fengdu. So how wouldn't he know the prince? Fang makes a face at them and asks why they don't keep talking. One of the sisters, irritated, says Fang is too reckless and moves toward her, but Mei Zhao steps in front and says she'll handle the defense. And so, a chaotic clash of various balls begins on the spot. Yanmo shouts that none of this matters and tells the sisters to fall back. A system message appears, warning that the administrator of that area is arriving. A light shines from the sky, and someone descends. The figure hits the ground at full speed, cracking it upon impact. The newcomer is General Rangsasa. She states that several people have reported someone communing with demons and that, if it's true, she will expel everyone from the area. Yanmo kneels and tries to explain that Liu had nothing to do with it, and asks her to let him and the girls go. Smiling, Rangsasa gives Yanmo a poor thing, and says he's too handsome and well-groomed to be involved with demons. But then she approaches the protagonist, and based on her experience, points at Liu and says he is the real culprit. After analyzing everyone, she concludes that the protagonist doesn't have the aura of a descendant of a god, which made him seem suspicious. Fang, outraged by the accusation, charges angrily toward the goddess. Shu and Mei Zhao try to stop her from doing something foolish. Yanmo explains that they're all friends and asks the goddess to let them go, promising to reward her in the future. One of the sisters comments that the master is very kind to Liu Nian, while the other asks her not to say such things in front of the goddess. Irritated, Rangsasa says Yanmo is a foolish young man, and that she only accepted the explanation out of respect for Emperor Fengdu. She then asks if he's offering something in exchange for Liu's freedom, and at that moment, a powerful aura surrounds her, causing everyone to feel the pressure of her immense power. Liu then asks her to stop, and says there's a way to resolve everything. The goddess tells him to show her. He whispers that he won't reveal the proof there, and invites her to a more private location. Yanmo, seeing the protagonist leaving with the goddess, thinks he has a plan to attack her, so he asks the sisters to watch them from a distance. They agree, already curious about what Liu would do. Sometime later, in a more remote area, Liu turns to Rangsasa and says he'll prove he has no connection to demons. He then shows the lotus seal given to him by Prince Neja. The goddess is startled upon seeing the seal. The two sisters, hiding in a nearby bush, think Liu wouldn't dare attack a goddess. But then they witness a questionable scene. Seeing it, they wonder what the two are doing and, irritated, believe Liu is not a good person. They decide to warn their master to stay away from him. At that moment, the goddess inspects the seal more closely and confirms that it's not fake, and that Liu is indeed one of Prince Neja's protected ones. The sisters, traumatized by what they saw, think that if they keep watching, they'll be corrupted. Sometime later, Yanmo sees Liu and the goddess returning from the forest. He shouts, asking if Liu is all right. The goddess replies that it was all a misunderstanding, that everything has been resolved, and that she'll report the death as a bug, not related to demons. The protagonist smiles, relieved that everything was cleared up so quickly. The goddess then says goodbye, and mentions that she will continue patrolling other nearby areas. Liu picks up Fang, who was unconscious on the ground. She wakes up and asks where Goddess Rangsasa is. Liu says he has already resolved everything and that she's gone. At that moment, Chun runs over to hug him and says she's so happy she wants to kiss him. Mei Zhao, watching Liu, thinks that he really does have the lotus seal and that it's very useful. Since her family is weaker, she believes she should be the one to marry Liu, and silently apologizes to Fang. The sisters just shrug and say that the protagonist is a great charlatan. Yanmo says goodbye, saying they need to take care of some things and will go on ahead. Liu waves goodbye and invites Yanmo to meet again in another dungeon. Looking back, Yanmo nods and says he'll show up again. Gongbao appeared seated on his throne, surrounded by his consorts. One of them picked up a grape to offer to Gongbao, but before she could do so, a voice echoed through the hall, warning that something was wrong. It was one of Gongbao's soldiers, reporting that Princess Wansheng had been eliminated. Without showing any reaction, Gongbao asked why he was so panicked, since she was just a pawn. Then, he questioned, "Was it Guifang who did this?" The guard explained that Guifang and Tianxiang had entered into conflict, and the princess had taken advantage of the situation to enter the dungeon. However, unexpectedly, Prince Neja had appeared. Therefore, The blame lay with Prince Neja himself. Reflecting on the information, Gongbao thought that the connection with the demon world was still unstable. That was why they could only send a few demons to deal with humans. In his thoughts, he remembered that the gods were still waiting for the return of the human emperor. If he could find him and then steal his essence, Gongbao would be able to establish a stable connection with the underworld, and thus fulfill his plans. He stood up and said he needed to handle some things personally. Before leaving, he intended to relieve some pressure, something he said while eyeing one of his consorts. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Mei Zhao was inviting the protagonist to do dual cultivation with her in a nearby cave. Shun also invited him and said she was a cool loli, assuring that the effect of the cultivation would be doubled. The two began fighting over the protagonist, who stood there without knowing how to react. But then Fang appeared to put an end to the chaos, saying that she was already his wife and wouldn't let anyone take him from her. She leaned on the protagonist and asked if he wanted to go to the apartment with her so she could help him relax that night. Mei Zhao and Shun also offered themselves for that task, but the protagonist seized the opportunity to escape. He said he had a few things to take care of, and when he returned, he would go to Fang's apartment. He also asked them to call him if they needed anything. The three of them burst into tears as they watched the protagonist walk away, leaving them behind. A few minutes later, in a quieter part of the forest, Liu thought it would be best to return to the tomb and forge the phoenix sword, now that he had obtained the necessary items. Upon arriving, he shouted to announce his return and asked if anything was still missing. One of his consorts welcomed him and congratulated him on acquiring the required materials. Liu asked what that was behind them, and she replied that it was a furnace where he could forge the phoenix sword. However, it wasn't complete yet and might explode, so she asked him to wait a little longer until it was ready. Liu thanked his consorts for their hard work and said he would open some gift packs he hadn't opened yet, and so he did. He opened a level 20 jade pack, and a system message appeared, stating that a legendary reward had been obtained: the Star Tower. This tower absorbs demonic cores, brings them back to life, and seals them inside. The two cores the protagonist possessed were instantly sucked into the tower. He then remembered that these were the cores of the Hydra demon Zhu Tuchong and Princess Wansheng. Upon examining the item more closely, he discovered that it granted him the ability to use the power of the demon core currently sealed inside it, which made him very excited. He then decided to enter the tower to see what it was like inside, as he had heard it was beautiful, similar to the towers the gods lived in. He was instantly teleported into the artifact. Upon arriving, he found himself before a massive tower. He took the time to admire every detail, and was enchanted by everything. But something caught his attention: two silhouettes chained to pillars right in front of him. As he looked more closely, the protagonist was shocked to recognize one of the figures. It was Princess Wansheng. The protagonist decides to approach the two, since that was his territory and they couldn't harm him there. Suddenly, the assistant hands the protagonist a punishment item, an artifact that causes the punished demon to lose a piece of its soul with every hit. With this new object, the protagonist thinks it would be very useful to have a regeneration ability like the one the Hydra demon used. Then, he approaches Zhu Tuchong. The two demons are startled to see the emperor himself before them. Liu, with a threatening gaze, says that if Zhu Tuchong tries anything, even though he is very useful, he will eliminate him. The two demons, outraged, ask what the emperor is trying to do and demand to be released immediately. Liu grips the punishment item firmly and says he will not kill them, as they will be very useful. Then he delivers a powerful blow to the Hydra demon and says it's for his cousin. The demon feels pieces of his soul being torn away and calls the protagonist a cruel bastard. Liu sarcastically replies that it was the system that gave him the item and there's nothing he can do about it. The princess, seeing her beloved being attacked, becomes furious and launches an attack at Liu, who blocks it with a simple snap of his fingers. He tells her to save her energy because this is his territory, and he makes the rules here. Liu then demands that they bow before him and become his minions. That way, they will no longer be punished. But the two demons refuse to accept being subjugated by a human. The protagonist approaches Zhu Tuchong once more and says that if he wants to die, it won't be now. Suddenly, he starts punishing Wansheng. She screams at her beloved, saying that if this continues, she won't last much longer. Desperate, Zhu Chong begs the protagonist to punish only him. Seeing the interaction between the two, the protagonist gets an idea. Liu says that the two killed many innocent creatures, so why won't they accept being punished? Some time passes, and the princess says she can't take it anymore. Liu then removes her from the pillar, holds the princess before the Hydra demon, and asks if it felt good when their subordinates did horrible things to innocent people at the Bibo pond. He turns to the princess and recalls that when Fang said just a few words, the princess wanted to take her to her monsters. Smiling, the protagonist says he will teach her a lesson, so she never forgets what she did to the young ones and innocent people. He then says he's going to show how the bunny jumps. The Hydra demon begs the protagonist to stop and promises to fight him. The protagonist pushes Wansheng to the ground and grabs her foot, saying he has eaten many kinds of feet before, but this will be the first time a princess eats one from a dragon. Zhu Chong shouts that the human emperor really isn't human. Looking at him, the protagonist says the demon sure knows how to get angry. Then he decides to use his grand finale and reveals his gold bar to the demons. Seeing the bar, the two think this would be the best cultivation partner to have. With the protagonist, they could become much stronger. The two realize they have lost this time and conclude that it's better to stay there and grow stronger, so they can leave that place someday. Zhu Chong asks Liu to wait and says they are willing to submit, begging him not to punish the princess anymore. The protagonist is thrilled, as everything went according to plan. He removes the demon's chains, who bow and thank the emperor for his forgiveness. The protagonist then decides to check their devotion percentage. But something strange happens to Zhu Chong. He suddenly transforms into a girl, declaring that she will serve the king and revealing her new name, Xiaojuzi. Xiaojuzi stood up and asked her master if he wanted to try, since she was now a woman. Liu, desperate, said no. She lay down and said she was ready, and Liu asked her to stop with that. The protagonist decided to test how much submission those two had, as he planned to leave quickly after acquiring their abilities. The protagonist looked at the numbers but couldn't understand anything, as the submission level remained low. A system message appeared, stating that the princess and the Hydra were communicating and asking if Liu wanted to listen. The protagonist quickly pressed yes. The two were plotting to pretend submission until they could perform dual cultivation with Liu and gain enough power to capture the protagonist and escape. The Hydra told the princess that she needed to focus on cultivating to improve her form. Outraged, she asked her husband if he was really allowing her to perform dual cultivation with the mortal. He replied that their goal now was to survive, and once they were strong enough, they would devour the protagonist. Liu, who was hearing all of this, became furious and realized that was why the submission level hadn't increased at all. He picked up the punishment item again and punished both of them at the same time. The Hydra tried to ask the protagonist to use the other whip, saying they would help their master satisfy his vices, but the protagonist said he wasn't really into that. Liu began pacing in circles, thinking about what to do with the two, until he looked to the side and got an idea when he saw two toy horses. He grabbed some clothes and ordered them to put them on. Looking at the outfit, the princess said it was too small and very embarrassing. Liu told them to get dressed quickly, or else he would show them a little something. So, they put on the schoolgirl-style clothes. Liu raised one of his hands and placed a kind of collar on each of them, then led them to where the toy horses were. He had prepared a little surprise. He told them to sit, lifted both of them into the air, and positioned them so they could ride the modified wooden horses. Once seated, the protagonist made them ride non-stop, while using the punishment item and ordering them to behave. As the horse moved back and forth, a system message appeared for the Hydra, asking her to submit to the emperor. After she submitted, a burst of water exploded. Liu, checking the information, saw that the submission level had risen to 50%, and now he could choose one of the demon's abilities to use. He decided to choose the Hydra's ability to regenerate any severed head. Upon accepting, a bright light enveloped Liu's body, and a snake appeared. The snake's heads began to speak, calling themselves the second head onward, leaving the protagonist speechless, as the ability seemed to have activated in the wrong place. He then asked why 9 little heads had appeared in front of him instead of behind, as it had been with the Hydra demon. The Hydra explained that it was because the master's treasure had been tempered, becoming the most yang part of his body, and therefore the most suitable place for the 9 heads to be born. The protagonist quickly accepted his fate, and told the princess that if she didn't comply, he would make her release water. The snakes surrounded the princess at that moment, and a system message appeared saying that the princess's submission had reached 50%, allowing Liu to acquire another ability. He chose the princess's purple dragon ability and felt very satisfied with his new gains. While playing with the protagonist's snakes, the princess asks if they could do dual cultivation after these recent accomplishments. She brings one of the snakes close to her mouth, and the protagonist wonders what she is doing. The Hydra explains that those snakes can feel the same sensations as the master's great treasure. The princess continues playing with Liu's snakes, which become visibly shy from that kind of interaction. At that moment, the protagonist can barely contain himself as he watches the scene until the snakes begin to cry, thus ending the princess's teasing. Then Liu says he's leaving now, and that if they are unfaithful, he will punish them. They reply that they wouldn't dare, as they are absolutely loyal. The protagonist then says goodbye and mentions that Daji is waiting for him. The two bid farewell to their beloved master. The protagonist asks Niu where consort Yu is. Niu explains that they asked her to help him with his clothes and take him to the inner hall. A few minutes later, Liu arrives at the inner hall. He sees Daji and the other consorts sitting in front of the furnace, channeling their energies into it. Daji says the concubines have prepared everything for his return. Liu asks why they have to be like that just to forge a sword. Daji responds that forging a sword isn't an easy talent. The blacksmith must be in a state free of impurities, both in body and mind, clean inside and out. Yu tells him to place the materials and the sword inside the furnace, and so the protagonist does, putting all the materials and the sword in the center of the furnace. Liu deeply hopes that everything will work and that they'll successfully forge the sword. Daji says they now need to sit around the furnace and practice their martial arts, injecting energy and essence into the cauldron. Liu sits and focuses on circulating his energy and essence throughout his body. At that moment, he feels his body become lighter, and his breathing more stable, as if he were in sync with the concubines. Liu opens his eyes, and a bright light bursts from them. Daji tells her sisters that the Emperor's energy has been revealed and asks the 3 of them to work together. They do so, channeling even more of their energy into the cauldron. The furnace rises above them, and their energies begin to swirl around it. Daji warns that the sword and the materials have begun to merge, but at that moment, the furnace explodes. Daji tries to protect Liu, telling him to be careful. Despite the intense light from the explosion, Liu manages to open his eyes and sees the phoenix sword fully forged, revealing its true form. The 3 consorts bow, honoring the Emperor and congratulating him on his new achievement. Examining the sword more closely, he wants to see if it's truly sharp. He turns the sword to the side, and a powerful beam of light shoots from it, slicing through everything in its path. The protagonist is startled, as the strike nearly hits Niu, who was guarding the room behind the door. The consorts are amazed by the sword's power, and Daji explains that its edge is razor-sharp and cuts in every direction. Confident, the protagonist declares that any demon he encounters from now on, he'll be able to handle. Back in the game world, Daji disguised the phoenix sword as a regular in-game item, and now he could use it freely. He looked at his sword and thought it was beautiful. Meanwhile, aboard the flying cruiser of the Mianxi Firefly Guild, a man was welcoming the guild members in front of a crowd of people watching him. This man was the guild leader, and his name was Lu Guan. He told everyone that their hard work had earned the guild high-level equipment. He asked if they were still willing to give their all. A man shouted that he wouldn't give up, and others followed, yelling that they didn't want to give up either. But a young woman among them seemed a bit confused about the whole situation. Descending the stairs, Lu Guan said they all came from humble beginnings, and no one was to blame for that. He approached the young woman, called her Number 7, and asked if she was willing to work like this for the rest of her life. Giving into the pressure, she shouted that she was. Lu Guan smiled as he heard the crowd ready to cooperate. Everyone began hugging and welcoming each other to the guild. Some said they were like a family, bound by love. Lu Guan raised one of his hands to draw everyone's attention. Looking out the window, he said they were nearing the guild's headquarters. He explained that the place was filled with abundant spiritual energy, with spirit stones and springs spread all over. If they immersed themselves for just 5 minutes, they would earn double experience for 8 hours. Everyone was excited about those benefits and began dreaming of all they could achieve. However, the president asked everyone to log out of the game and hand over their devices before entering the place, and he asked for their understanding. Everyone started handing in their gear because closing the game, their only line of contact with the outside world, would prevent administrators from tracking them. A suspicious girl handed over her phone, and the man carrying the box of devices informed Lu Guan that everything had been collected. They finally arrived at what was supposedly the guild's location. One of the men announced that just behind that cave was the guild's hall, where their dreams would begin. He asked everyone to follow President Liu. One of the new members said something felt wrong. Another said it was probably motion sickness from the trip. So, they continued into the cave. Lu Guan paused for a moment, then turned to them with an evil look. At that moment, one of the men activated an iron gate behind them, trapping them inside the cave. Number 7 asked what they were doing. With a sinister grin, the man told everyone not to be afraid and just wait for death. The girl asked the president if he wasn't going to take them to the springs. Suddenly, several portals appeared around Lu Guan. A face began to emerge from one of the portals, and a true demon appeared in front of them. Lu Guan bowed before the demon and said he would learn the art of white bones as soon as possible. The demon simply nodded. Lu Guan declared that all the others would become white bones, but requested that the female players serve another purpose. The demon simply told him to hurry, as they needed to leave quickly. With a dark smile, Lu Guan said he was hungry and launched a sort of slime toward one of the girls, trapping her with his strange power. The other girl, a secret agent from the Hong Kong chamber, lay on the ground and begged President Jiang to come save her soon. Sometime later, a group of women was flying nearby. One of them, named Jiang Shui, thought about how she had tried to contact Hong Yanya, but was glad there were still traces of her around. At that moment, Jiang Shui wondered what those people were up to. Looking at the bright blue sky, the protagonist was sitting on a tree nearby, taking a break after defeating some monsters. Suddenly, he saw a bunch of roses flying overhead. He quickly stood up and wondered why those people were in such a hurry. Could it be that the world boss had reappeared nearby? Everyone there began calling out for someone to save them as the demon approached. One of the men tried to get close to Hong Yanya, but she struck him hard in the lower parts. Lu Guan, who hadn't even begun what he planned to do, asked what was going on. He threw slime in Yanya's direction, and as she tried to defend herself, she said he would be punished for being a dishonest person. Surrounded by several men, she called Lu Guan a bastard. Suddenly, the men were hit by ice attacks. Jiang Shui had arrived at the scene. Crying, Yanya called out for the president. Lu Guan asked the demon for help to get rid of them, and the demon agreed, calling them a pile of trash. He raised one of his hands, and several spikes emerged from the ground, attacking them directly. The president, unshaken, held one of her followers while staring down the enemies. Seeing that some had not yet fallen, Lu Guan told the others to help finish them off. Shui shouted, asking if he had truly conspired with a demon to harm his own guild members. Smiling, Lu Guan replied that as long as the profit was high, he'd sell even his parents' house. He rushed toward her and launched a powerful water slash attack, but Shui stood firm and activated her ice ability. Crystals of ice began to cover Lu Guan's body. Shui seized the moment and struck a final blow on her opponent. Wounded, Lu Guan admitted he hadn't expected her to be so strong. She approached him with her sword and declared that she had already alerted the authorities about Mianxi Guild's activities, demanding he release the hostages immediately. The demon, excited by her strength, said she was now worthy of his attention. He held something in his hand, which transformed into a large weapon. Lu Guan, clinging to the demon's legs, begged him to finish off the woman quickly. But suddenly, Lu Guan lost his head, literally. The guild members, shocked, shouted that the demon had attacked the president and told everyone to run. The demon coldly stated that, Now that they had been discovered, everyone there was useless, and he struck them all at once. One of the women warned Shui to be careful, as the demon was extremely powerful. Without thinking, Shui rushed toward the demon and landed a powerful blow that shattered him. But as expected, the demon reassembled himself and returned to his original form. He counterattacked and ordered Shui to be obedient and surrender herself as his food. Bravely, she tried to defend herself from the demon's attacks, but he was too strong. She wondered how she would be able to save everyone in that moment. Then, a red lightning bolt flashed through the room, cutting the demon in half. Zhui was shocked by the scene. As the demon tried to reassemble himself, the one responsible for the insane strike appeared. It was our beloved protagonist, who, as always, showed up at just the right time. Shu asked, "Who are you?" while looking at the protagonist. He introduced himself, saying that in the world of the gods, demons were forbidden. Shui replied that this wasn't the time for jokes, because if he died here, it would be for real. One of her disciples commented that Liu didn't know his true place. At that moment, the protagonist activated his vision ability and realized that the enemy really was a true demon. But as he looked at Hong, he wondered why she also had a demonic aura. The demon advanced toward the protagonist, claiming he had invaded the territory of the Lady of White Bone. Liu told Zhui to get the wounded out of there, so they wouldn't interfere with his attack speed. He got into position and thought that once everyone was out, he could freely use the demon abilities he gained from the tower. He then unleashed the Phoenix Sword attack on the demon rushing at him with full force. The blow managed to break some of the demon's bones, and the demon admitted the protagonist was truly strong. However, he quickly recovered and said that as long as he had enough magic power, he would regenerate endlessly. Shu reminded the protagonist that she had warned him. This was a real demon, and she didn't think Liu could defeat him. But Liu became intrigued by the demon's infinite regeneration, and, launching a flurry of attacks, said he wanted to see if the regeneration was faster than his strikes. He began chaining together combos that left everyone speechless. Even the girls were stunned, amazed by the strength and relentlessness of the attacks. The demon, smiling, confirmed that he could indeed regenerate infinitely, but then realized something was wrong. He was seeing Liu upside down. At that moment, he noticed that his head was no longer where it should be. Liu couldn't help but laugh, saying the demon looked even more ridiculous than his 9 brothers. Trying to recover, the demon muttered that the constant attacks seemed to have caused a small bug in his regeneration. Liu chose to keep going. As he resumed his attacks, the demon attempted to bribe him with the technique of the Lady of White Bone, but Liu refused, saying he wasn't interested. The demon insisted, claiming it was a rare opportunity, and that Liu shouldn't waste it. But Liu kicked apart his remaining bones and finished him off. From a distance, Shui stared at Liu. She suddenly remembered something. Liu Nian was a solo player who had broken the speed record in the Valley of 1,000 Underworlds. She had never imagined he'd have such extraordinary power against demons. She began to consider recruiting him to her guild. Those around were greatly relieved to see that the demon had been defeated. The girl in white was excited too, saying that if Liu were her boyfriend, life would be so much fun. Hong approached Shui and thanked her, saying she had saved them. The protagonist, glancing sideways, thought again about the strange aura surrounding Hong. He could smell a demon, but couldn't quite see what she really was. Deciding to investigate, he unexpectedly approached Hong. The girls were startled by his sudden movement. Shui drew her sword and stepped in front of Hong, asking Liu what he intended to do and if he was crazy to attack a member of her guild. Hong hugged Shui, crying, and begged for help, saying she had just escaped danger and was now being targeted by a lunatic. She pointed at Liu and claimed he wasn't a good person, that before all this, he had tried to kidnap her, but she managed to escape, and now he was angry and wanted to kill her. All the girls in Zhue's guild were furious upon hearing that, even saying that there were no good men left in the world. Zhou, at that moment, wondered if Liu had really done it. Even though Hong was her closest relative, she felt like something wasn't right. The girls surrounded Liu, shouting for everyone to protect Vice President Hong Yan. The protagonist smiled and said, "The truth is that you're a demon, and if you want to spread lies about me, I'll show you what it means to be a true wolf." Shui hugged Hong, who was still crying, and told Liu she would look into the situation calmly. But for now, she asked him to leave, since he had saved everyone. Shu's disciples didn't want to let the protagonist go so easily and demanded he pay for the crime he supposedly committed. At that moment, Hong stared at the protagonist with glowing red eyes and a wicked smile forming on her face. Su hugs Hong and asks Liu to leave quickly. Meanwhile, someone was watching them. A man named Xiaogu appears, saying they had insulted his goddess Hong and that he would not allow it. However, deep down, he had simply waited for Liu to deal with the demon so he could show up afterward and try to win over a girl. Shui, staring at him, says that she already told Liu to leave, and so he will. She then turns to the protagonist and urges him to go. Liu responds that she doesn't recognize people's good intentions, and then begins to leave the cave alone. A few minutes later, Shui asks who the person was that disturbed her earlier, but Hong starts laughing with a wicked smile. A red aura begins to surround her, and Shui realizes that she isn't really Hong, then asks who she is. Hong begins to transform into someone else. It was the Lady of the White Bone. She tells Shui to take a good look and see who she really is. Shui, protecting one of her disciples, is shocked to see the White Bone demon. The demon raises her hand and says that the obstacles have finally vanished. She then unleashes her bone attack and declares that after using it, she will eliminate everyone there. Several magic circles start to appear beneath everyone's feet, and some women begin to be captured. They cry out for help, but Shui, trying to defend against the bones, realizes they can't be destroyed. The demon says that Shui is strong, but no human could withstand her attacks. Thus, Shui is also captured by the bones rising from the ground. The demon then reveals that she already knew Hong was a spy, which is why she took her form, to lure them all there. Shui says she can't die there, as she hasn't met the king yet. The demon strikes at her and says she will drain Shui's life energy. Shui screams, calling out to her king. At that moment, a strike hits the bones and stops them from reaching Shui. Once again, the day is saved by Liu. He arrives confidently, asking if she called for him. Shui is surprised to see him at that moment. He turns to the demon and says she's thousands of years old and still using cheap disguise tricks. The demon replies that he really managed to get under her skin. The girl in white falls in love with the protagonist, since he saved her twice that day, and decides she'll reward him later. Everyone around starts murmuring, wondering if Liu will be able to defeat the demon. Xiaogu questions if Liu is not actually allied with the demon, but suddenly, he's struck in the face by a golden brick thrown by the protagonist, who tells him to stop talking nonsense. The girl in white shouts, encouraging Liu to defeat the demon. The demon, full of confidence, says that just because he defeated her subordinates doesn't mean he'll be able to defeat her. She promises that if he does manage it, she'll become his slave for life. The protagonist tells her to come and accept defeat, as he's already excited to take her demonic pill. The demon then attacks, saying that today she'll make Liu reincarnate once more, and throws 2 flaming skulls at him. She declares that even if a god were present, he wouldn't be able to stop the attack of the white bone spirit, and that this would be the end of the protagonist. At that moment, Shu notices that Liu didn't hesitate and struck back at the demon. Already prepared for the next blow, Liu asks if they thought that last attack had shown his full strength. He then activates the ability he took from the Hydra demon, and 2 serpent heads are wiped out. Liu leaps into the air, and looking down at the demon, says he'll see her at his star tower. The demon, shocked, realizes that the protagonist was truly risking his life. He then wields the Phoenix Sword, and lands a direct strike on the demon. After defeating the White Bone demon, Liu obtained her pill and a piece of armor. He was thrilled to have acquired her pill, and thought that if he could make her submissive, he would be able to gain her image-shifting ability. The protagonist then briefly remembered what she had said about becoming his slave if he defeated her. At that moment, the sound of knees hitting the ground echoed through the cave. The girl in white asked Liu to accept her as his bed-warming servant, but the other girls also began to compete for the protagonist's attention. One of them said he was so strong he seemed like a god and decided she had to win him over. Shui watched from a distance, amazed that a mere human had managed to defeat such a powerful demon. Liu, confident, said they were all exaggerating. After all, Defeating evil was the duty of a man from the Xia dynasty. However, when he looked back, he noticed all the girls were blushing and covering their eyes. He wondered why they were all looking down. Liu's snakes were sad because heads 8 and 9 had died, and one of them said Liu needed to practice dual cultivation to restore his energy and bring them back. Startled and deeply embarrassed, Liu quickly hid his snakes. Embarrassed, he thought he had already put them away, but they had come out on their own. Xiaogu insisted that Liu had been working with the white bone demon, and that she had only been pretending. He added that he wasn't fooled by such a trick. Xu then drew her weapon and faced the protagonist, asking Liu whether he was human or demon. Xiaogu claimed that now that the demon's aura had been dispelled, he was able to contact the GM, and that a god would arrive soon, and he believed the protagonist would be eliminated. Zue said she believed Liu was a good person but claimed he only practiced stealth martial arts. At that moment, a portal opened in the sky, and a voice shouted that Liu wasn't going anywhere. A massive spiritual form of General Rakshasa descended from the sky. As she landed, everyone except the protagonist was forced to bow due to the weight of her presence. Xiaogu said the pressure was so immense that he couldn't even lift his head, but he believed that after the general eliminated Liu, he would be hailed as the hero of the day. Looking up at her from below, he silently wished she would use her hammer to punish the protagonist. Zhue declared that it was Liu who had killed the Lady of the White Bone, and asked the general to swing her hammer for justice. The girl in white pleaded for Liu to be spared and offered to take his place if he were to be punished, and in that moment, half of her HP was drained. The general leaned on the protagonist and, smiling, said he was stirring up trouble again. Xiaogu thought that, given how many rules the protagonist must have broken, he would surely be punished, and that would make him the hero of all the ladies there. But General Rakshasa hugged the protagonist and said she was very proud that he had defeated a demon despite being just a human. She added that this was why he was under the protection of Prince Neja. Everyone present was shocked by the scene. Xiaogu claimed that the protagonist had 7 artifacts and was probably allied with demons, demanding that he be put in his place. The general simply ignored him and turned to Liu, saying that the last time he had shown her the lotus seal, she had seen what he was hiding, and now, with 7 artifacts, she wanted to examine everything again. Liu asked what she intended to do. Everyone was once again shocked by the general's behavior. Xue realized that the protagonist knew both the general and Prince Neja, and that they seemed to be close. Xiaogu, outraged, accused the general of protecting criminals and said he would report her. Rakshasa looked back at where Xiaogu stood and asked if he was looking for death, then reduced his HP by 1. At that moment, someone emerged from a portal above them, shouting for everyone to stop. It was a man wearing a radiant battle helmet. The man introduced himself as the god Erlang, Yangjian, and with him was the new dog Fufu, the successor of Xiaotian. Everyone present bowed before the god Yangjian, everyone except the protagonist, who stared at him directly. The god, looking down, stared back intensely, and asked why he hadn't shown reverence. Liu replied that one day he would be in a position above Yangjian, shocking everyone with such bold words. Rakshasa, upon hearing this, said that Liu must be crazy. Xue thought the sentence sounded completely natural coming from him. Xiaogu taunted the protagonist, telling him to keep being arrogant. At that moment, Fufu came charging down angrily toward Liu. The general and Xue tried to intervene, saying that Liu had defeated a demon and begged the god for forgiveness, but Fufu leapt onto the protagonist, leaving both women disheartened that their pleas had been in vain. Xiaogu urged Fufu to devour the protagonist, but everyone was confused for a moment. Fufu was actually licking and playing with Liu. Xiaogu was speechless. Hugging the dog, the protagonist said he hadn't expected Xiaotian's successor to be nothing like the fierce beast from the stories. Fufu then explained that the original Xiaotian had fallen in love with a female dog, and his master banished him to the mortal world. Fufu was now the 2nd-generation Xiaotian. Xue picked him up and said the corgi was very cute. Irritated, Fufu muttered that this human dared insult him, but he soon surrendered to Xue's affection. God Erlang asked whether that person had a demonic aura. Fufu answered that he didn't sense any. The protagonist then composed himself and realized that Fufu had been checking his aura all along. General Rakshasa asked to speak to God Erlang. She explained that Prince Neja had told her this boy possessed extraordinary talent, and that after entering this world, he absorbed energy and produced 9 treasures. So, it all made sense. The god said he understood, but since the general had harmed a human, she would be punished. Rakshasa accepted the punishment without protest. God Erlang then turned to Xiaogu and said he had heard everything he had been plotting, slandering Liu and the general, and therefore decided to drain Xiaogu's energy so he would have to train from scratch, from level 26 back to 1. Xiaogu cried out that 2 months of effort had been wasted. The god then called for the dog Xiao Tian, and Fufu quickly returned. Before fully entering the portal, the god told everyone to behave and walk the righteous path, because if he discovered anyone allied with a demon, they would be severely punished. Looking at the protagonist, he silently thought that he would be waiting for him up above, and Liu smiled, accepting the invitation. But something caught the protagonist's attention at that moment. All the girls wanted to approach him, asking if he wanted to practice cultivation that night. The girl in white said that even with 2 hands, she could only serve 5 people, and then began crying, wondering what she should do. Rakshasa commented that it seemed she had accidentally revealed a big secret today, and because of that, Liu Nian would soon be in trouble. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the game, someone was fighting a bear using a game console. He celebrated, having finally defeated the bear spirit after a long struggle. He then threw the console into the air and shouted, "I, Sun Wukong, just want to find a peaceful place to play games, but it turns out God Erlang chased me even here," he continued, warning the god not to blame him if he sends him west. This was the Monkey King, Sun Wukong, on the run. Back in the cave where the protagonist was, the girl in white approached him, thinking that no matter what he wanted, she would satisfy him. She touched him gently and said her name was Bao Mei, offering to give Liu a facial treatment. The other girls also ran toward Liu, saying they wanted to train with him. Before leaving, Rakshasa told Liu not to overexert himself, and wondered why the god Erlang had come to that world. She believed she'd be punished, quite literally in the rear, and then decided to leave. Shui coughed to draw attention. Seeing the protagonist surrounded by the other girls, she remarked that the path of dual cultivation was dishonorable, even if it wasn't forbidden. Liu corrected her, saying that was wrong, and added that the psychologist Freud once said the practice of this kind of cultivation was the origin of humanity. The girls around him became even more enamored with his intelligence, but he pointed a finger at Shuo and asked if she still had any objections. She felt strongly affected by his words, and thought that dual cultivation wasn't shameful at all. In fact, she felt as if she were breaking free from traditional restraints that very day. Coming back to her senses, she said she would never engage in such cultivation, especially not with him. He calmly replied that he never said he would do that with her anyway. Xu then thought that she only had one man in mind, the human emperor, who had appeared in her dreams. A few minutes later, they exited the cave. Xue said she needed to rescue her brothers, who had been held captive by the Lady of the White Bone and her underlings. As she left with her sword, she said she'd see the protagonist again if fate allowed. The others who stayed behind were lost and unsure of what to do next, now without a place to stay. They asked the protagonist what they should do. Liu thought about how these people had been deceived by that guild, and now had nowhere to go. So he decided to establish a new guild and assigned Fang the task of selecting them. Liu then told everyone to look for Fang Kier in the VIP village, as she would relocate them, all except one man with the surname Xiao and level 1. That man became furious with the protagonist once again. Meanwhile, the others were very grateful for Liu's kindness, as they would be sent to the VIP village. But Bao Mei felt sad, imagining that Fang, being a rich girl from a noble family, would surely become the protagonist's first wife. Still, she decided not to give up. After all, there would be days in the month when Fang would be uncomfortable, and that would be Bao Mei's chance to take care of Liu. They all said goodbye to Liu, leaving him behind in the cave. Just then, his phone started ringing. It was the lady from the Baohua Tower. When he answered, she said she had news about Liu's father and asked him to meet her at the tower. The protagonist thought that now, with actual survival skills, he finally had a chance to save his father. A few hours later, the protagonist entered Baohua Tower. He asked where his father was, But as he stepped through a curtain, he was met with something unexpected. The lady from the tower told him to hurry and take a bath. As she approached him, she said that nothing in Baohua Tower came for free. The protagonist asked how much money she wanted. She replied that she already had plenty of money. What she wanted was him. She then asked him to assist her with dual cultivation. Meanwhile, on the 5th level of that game world, the god Arlong was speeding through the trees, shouting about a damned monkey who couldn't stay still. Even after achieving the status of a Buddha, something many people longed for, that damned monkey simply didn't care. Sun Wukong had fled from the Eastern teachings, and the god Arlong, Yang Jian, had been tasked with capturing him. At that moment, Fufu alerted that he had caught Sun Wukong's scent and said he was in the forest ahead. Irritated and with his eyes blazing, the god said he had finally found him. Fufu asked to be the first to fight and descended toward the dense forest. However, the god told the dog to step back. Summoning his weapon, the god Arlang told Fufu that he wouldn't be able to withstand even one round of combat against Sun Wukong and urged him to be more careful with his life. Fufu became sad as his master dove at full speed into the forest. Upon reaching the ground, he found the Monkey King already prepared to fight. Sun Wukong, also irritated, said he had done so much in the name of Buddha, so why couldn't he just rest and enjoy a little fun now? The god Arlang replied that self-worth could only be found through work and that he would become a useless monkey if he continued like this. He added that the position of Buddha was not something one could simply abandon. The god then ordered Sun Wukong to return immediately with him to heaven to be punished, and reaffirmed the punishment by saying he would destroy all the poor monkey's devices. Overcome by a surge of fury, Sun Wukong decided to attack. The two clashed head-on, and a great explosion of power erupted around them. Sun Wukong declared that anyone could do this job, and asked what was so great about being the Jade Emperor. The god replied that Sun Wukong was insulting the Jade Emperor and still defying the laws of heaven, only increasing his sin. The god Arlang stepped back for a moment, then activated the third eye on his forehead. A powerful beam of light shot toward Sun Wukong, who used his staff to rise high into the sky and escape the attack. He shrank the staff once more and declared that he would show god Arlang his true abilities as a battle Buddha. He descended rapidly to the forest floor and struck the ground hard with his staff, causing the entire area around him to crack from the impact. Meanwhile, the protagonist was practicing dual cultivation with Miss Qing. His 7 serpents appeared at that moment. Qing became excited because everything she had heard was true. Those 7 serpents were perfect for dual cultivation. The protagonist commented that news from the Baohua Tower always spread fast, and as soon as he arrived, the serpents were already aware of it. Miss Qing, playfully interacting with the serpents, said that the Qingshu clan was skilled in dual cultivation and affirmed that they would be able to advance together. The serpents grew excited, thanked her for the meal, and promised not to fail. A bright light emerged in the place. The protagonist felt as if he were swimming through clear waters and said that with this new form, he could practice more than 300 times. His other forms also felt great doing so and said they would give their dear little sister a massage. They took turns pleasing Miss Qing until they sensed that something great was about to happen. Qing then said their level was about to rise. Looking at her hand, she confirmed that they had successfully leveled up. She added that this small advancement equated to 400 years, and declared that she couldn't let this opportunity pass. She concluded by saying that if she didn't get tired today, she wouldn't be a fox anymore. At that moment, serpents 8 and 9 reappeared, making the other serpents very happy. And once again, a strong light took over the place as they continued practicing cultivation. But on the other side of the wall, the pigman stood still, crying as he begged Liu to go more slowly with Miss Qing during the practice. A few hours later, Qing appeared and said they had practiced more than 50 times, and it seemed they had reached the limit of the cultivation level they could attain. The protagonist, exhausted, simply asked if she would now tell him where his father was. She replied that for Liu's sake, she would reveal it. She continued, saying that his father was imprisoned in a cave full of spider webs. The pigman outside, upon hearing that, wondered if that was where his mother lived. The pigman remembers that his grandfather was the commander Tianping. However, the ancestors of the Zhubaji family had no children, so his grandfather was appointed and inherited the position of Commander Deity Tianping to continue leading the Celestial River. Since the wife of Zhu Baji's ancestor was from the Spider Clan, their great Lao Zhu family had to marry into the Spider Clan for several generations. As a result, his mother belonged to that clan. Desperate, he remembers that his father died in battle, and his mother has lived alone in that cave for hundreds of years. He wonders if she captured the protagonist's father to turn him into a stepfather, and if that happens, he would become Liu Nian's older brother. The little pig jumps at the feet of the protagonist, who was just leaving the tower. Liu asks what Baji is doing there, and crying, he calls him dear brother. Confused, the protagonist pushes him away and asks since when they were brothers. Flying, Baji says it's unfair for a younger brother to hit the older one. Liu says he doesn't have time to talk and asks if Baji has something new to show him. Baji asks if Liu wants to buy gear to fight their mother, but suddenly a scream is heard nearby. The protagonist says it's a demon and calls Baji to investigate. Baji replies that he heard Liu eliminated the Lady of the White Bone and adds that now Liu is addicted to demon hunting. Liu runs off excitedly while the pigman begs him to wait for his older brother. Meanwhile, around a nearby corner, a small man has a tigress tied up. He says she can scream all she wants because that only excites him more. He grabs the fabric wrapped around her and rips it off. Excited, the man declares he'll make her happy today. Desperate, the tigress tries to escape but ends up hitting her head against a wall, just as Liu arrives, demanding the man stop. The man turns around and asks how a mere man and a pig dare interfere. Baji grabs Liu's clothes and says that, even if the protagonist wants to run around exterminating demons, there are things he doesn't understand and should try talking first. The protagonist, at that moment, is just thinking about getting a few more pills. Baji then asks the little demon if he recognizes the nine-toothed rake weapon. The man says he recognizes Baji, and that their fathers were friends back when they destroyed Shang. Baji moves closer to the protagonist, and whispers that they're on the same side and could report the situation. But in truth, the little demon thinks the opposite. Their parents were bitter enemies. He worries that if he gets reported, his father will find out he's been intimidating people, and that will cause serious trouble. Trying to defuse the situation, the little demon claims they're on the same side, but suddenly he leaps toward Baji, shouting that he'll eliminate the pigman first, then the human. However, he is taken by surprise when the protagonist unleashes the venomous purple dragon attack, instantly defeating the little demon. Before vanishing, the demon begs his father for revenge. Annoyed, Liu tells Baji that following rules is fine, if there's someone strong enough to protect you. Otherwise, it's better to eliminate everyone before they react. Baji comments that the little demon probably entered without being registered, which is why the protagonist could eliminate him without issue. Reflecting on it, Baji realizes the rumors about the protagonist's power are true. Liu then says he's seen many gods sending their descendants into this world as NPCs and asks if Baji owns any territory. Baji replies that only official gods have territory, and he is merely a divine servant, which is the equivalent of a temp worker or a security guard in the human world. He shows a sort of map that indicates the positions of official gods and servants. The protagonist then understands the hierarchy, but asks what the tigress has to do with the whole story. Baji asks what the protagonist thinks about taking her home to care for her. But as the pigman places the tigress on his shoulders, a silhouette appears, saying that Baji acted wrongly because of Liu, and even considered bringing a street woman home. Desperate, Baji shouts that it must be his mother. It is his spider mother. Facing them both, she demands to know how they dare. Liu tries to explain that it's not what she's thinking. They were only helping. Baji tries to say that Liu eliminated the Lady of the White Bone and wouldn't do anything bad to anyone. Baji's mother grabs his ear and says the spiderweb cave was taken by Gongbao, and she came after Baji to take care of him. She says that if she hadn't come back, he'd be even worse off. What she says catches the protagonist's attention. Staring at him, the Spider-Woman asks if he's the bearer of the supreme body for dual cultivation. She heard that cultivating with him can immediately raise one's level, and that feeding on snake milk can prolong life. She also remembers seeing a seductive fox flaunting herself online who had just advanced a level, and wonders if he was involved in that too. But the protagonist is completely lost in thought. If the spiderweb cave was taken by Gongbao, that means his father is in serious danger. Liu thinks he has to go to the cave no matter what. Meanwhile, the Spider-Woman thinks she must capture the protagonist, and Baji reflects that Liu's father may not have been captured by his mother. But still, he has a bad feeling. The Spider-Woman asks Baji to take the tiger girl away first, as she has some matters to discuss with Liu Nian. Baji tries to refuse, saying he wants to go with her as well, but she glares at him and says he hasn't been listening to his mother for a long time, and there are many things she needs to resolve with him. The pigman simply says he understands, and that he'll take the girl to get healed. He picks up the tigress and runs off quickly. Now alone with Liu, she asks if they can go somewhere quieter, as she has something important to talk about. The protagonist asks if it's about Baji, and adds that he also has something to say about the spiderweb cave. The two of them begin walking through the city. The protagonist wonders why his body is getting goosebumps, and why so many players are staring at him on the street. The Spider-Woman shows Liu her phone, and says it's because he's become famous for dual cultivation, and now everyone wants to practice with him. Seeing that information on the phone, the protagonist thinks that, if this keeps up, he's going to get killed sooner or later. At that moment, his phone starts ringing. It's Fang, asking what he's been doing these past few days, since he said he would come visit her at her apartment. Mei Jiao appears, saying she misses him a lot, and then shows off her new yoga pose, asking Liu if she's doing it right. But Fang interrupts Mei Jiao, saying that several people came looking for her these past days, claiming Liu sent them. Fang wants to know if that's true or not. Liu apologizes and says he forgot to tell her. After the incident with the guilds, he thought it would be better to create his own. He explains that he saved those players from the White Bone Lady, and suggests she choose the ones with the most potential to join the guild. Shu appears and says she was thrilled to hear about the protagonist's accomplishments. She asks if he got hurt and tells him to come back soon so she can give him a massage with essential oils. Fang interrupts her too, saying that Liu is her husband and that he can only have a concubine if she agrees. If she catches him cheating, he's finished. Then she ends the call, leaving the protagonist completely confused. The Spider-Woman then says that Baji turned out the way he did because of Liu's bad behavior with women. Embarrassed, he replies that Baji's issues have nothing to do with him. But staring at the protagonist, she thinks to herself that if his girlfriend calls again later, things might get even more interesting. A while later, they arrive at the place the Spider-Woman had chosen, but the protagonist finds it suspicious. While looking at the screen showing room promotions, Liu tries to ask if they can go somewhere else to talk. But she insists that only that place will do, and tells him not to think weird thoughts. She just wants a quiet place to talk. She takes his hand and leads him inside. At the front desk, she asks for a romantic aquatic room. The receptionist hands her the room card, and the staff start whispering about the protagonist entering with an older woman, commenting they'd heard rumors about a guy who's famous for dual cultivation going around. Still in the hallway, the protagonist thinks he needs to get back to the Star Tower soon to obtain his transformation ability. They enter the room, and the Spider-Woman locks the door behind them. Liu, looking around nervously, becomes increasingly uneasy. The Spider-Woman says that he led Baji down the wrong path and asks what they should do now. Liu tries once again to explain that it's not his fault. He also says he just remembered something he needs to do, and that he's going to leave first. But the Spider-Woman replies that it's not that easy to leave. The protagonist, growing more uncomfortable, asks her not to force him to escape by force. She wraps him in her web and asks if he wants to hurt her, because she doesn't want to do that to him. She adds that he's already being dishonest about what he really wants to do. The protagonist only says it was a spontaneous reaction. The Spider-Woman laments that his girlfriend called earlier, otherwise they could have had a little fun now. She then moistens her lips and kisses our dear hunter protagonist. Throwing the protagonist backward along with his clothes, Liu becomes frightened by the situation. The spider, seeing the protagonist's golden treasure, remarks that he was truly born with the gift of dual cultivation, 1 in a million in the world. The protagonist complains that the air conditioner is too cold and asks her to return his clothes, but the spider replies that she can see Liu's body holds a lot of energy, and, like a furnace, she's going to ignite it today. Liu tries to stop her from approaching, saying that Baji is his only friend around and he couldn't do this to him. But the spider insists, saying Liu will cultivate with her, because that way he'll actually be helping Baji to grow. The protagonist stammers and pleads with her not to come any closer. With a tearful look, the spider asks if Liu wants his best friend to be left without a mother. She then offers a tug-of-war match with the protagonist. She throws out a web that wraps around the two of them and says, "There will be a flag in the middle of the spider web." She continues, saying that this way, they can test whether her fixation force or his pulling force is stronger. Then she adds that if he wins, she'll let him go immediately. Confident, the protagonist says that, with the help of Daji and the others who refined his body, he believes he'll win easily. He decides to accept the challenge to get out of there, and the spider agrees. Liu asks her to begin, and she starts counting down. As they begin to pull the web with all their strength, Liu initially takes the lead, and the spider starts to look worried. She uses all the strength of her shell to pull on the protagonist's golden treasure. Suddenly, the shell speaks, saying that Liu has been tricked, and jumps toward him. Liu wonders if this was really supposed to be a tug-of-war. The spider then says it's time to begin the dual cultivation practice. Desperate, the protagonist thinks the pulling force made it impossible to dodge. The shell quickly closes around Liu's treasure. With a trembling voice, Liu asks how she could lie to him. The spider responds that now that the shell is closed, he just needs to follow her. At that moment, somewhere nearby, Zhang Guifeng is rushing by, saying that during a night patrol, someone had passed through and encouraged people to do those things with others. He then enters the room and is shocked to see the protagonist there. He quickly leaves, slamming the door, saying he entered the wrong room. Standing in the hallway, Guifeng comments that even after so many years, the king still likes beautiful women, and that one looked like a widow. He lights a cigarette and thinks that the king has really been quite playful. He decides to report this to Master Wen and suggests they arrange a meeting with the king. At the same time, the spider and Liu had sensed Guifeng's presence. She stands up and says she's no longer interested, and that they can practice another day. Liu feels immensely relieved for having escaped the situation. Sometime later, Liu had already left the room. He wonders whether or not he actually did something with the spider. He believes that what happened doesn't count as a full act. Looking toward a ravine, Liu hears a voice singing. It was a small boy playing a string instrument and singing loudly. The boy approaches Liu and says he possesses the 4 swords of Zhuxian, as well as the formations. He asks if the protagonist is interested. Observing the child, the protagonist realizes he is a level 43 Taoist priest, but also that he's a little liar. He decides to simply ignore him and move on. In the boy's thoughts, he confirms that this false information is just a cover to hide his real identity. A few seconds later, Liu walks past him without stopping. The boy insists that the protagonist check out the formations, saying he only needs 100 million. Liu refuses again. The boy keeps trying to persuade him, but it's all in vain. Watching from a distance, the boy says that this man is Di Xin and that his calculations were correct. He goes on, saying that he feels his life's mission is to intercept and conceal the heavenly secrets. He also remembers his past, when 2 gods conspired against him, so he would be destroyed and captured. When he was imprisoned in the Zixiao Palace, he ended up becoming a demon and awakening into the demonic world. But before that could fully happen, his soul escaped from his demonized body and became free. Because of that, his body lost some power, becoming smaller and causing him to fall into the realm of fairies. Still, he says that even though his body shrank, he remains a Taoist, and he intends to regain his original form. Activating one of his techniques, the boy turns to the protagonist and calls him Emperor Xin, saying he will help him protect his true identity. Even the gods will struggle to uncover his secrets. Then he casts a spell from behind the protagonist. Upon being hit, Liu feels like he's floating, but all he really wants is to continue on his path.
At that moment, Liu is transported to the kingdom of the spider web cave. Watching from a distance, he notices there's a demon on that mountain and that it's probably where the cave is located. The protagonist thinks that even though he now has more lives, it wouldn't be good to die repeatedly due to the enormous power difference. He decides it's better to capture a small demon outside the cave and explore the situation inside later. A few moments later, Liu observes a small demon saying that the king ordered him to patrol the mountain. The demon continues, saying that if he sees the beauty again, he should return quickly to the cave and present her to the king. Annoyed by the small demon singing around, Liu says to himself that he'll shut him up later. The protagonist then remembers that, after eliminating that small demon, he acquired the immortal binding rope. He grabs the rope and throws it toward the small demon, who is startled by the sudden attack. A few seconds later, the little demon identifies himself as Xiao Xianfeng, the confidant of the hundred-eyed demon king. Liu jumps from the tree to the ground and asks if the hundred-eyed king is not doing well. Xianfeng replies that Liu is very bold to say that, because if the king heard it, he would surely skin him alive. The protagonist then looks at the small demon with red eyes and says that, as the king's confidant, he must have harmed many people. Liu wonders how he should punish him. The small demon tries to argue that he didn't harm anyone. The protagonist says that if the demon answers his questions obediently, he will let him go. He then asks what the strengths and hobbies of the hundred-eyed king are. Xianfeng says that the king is a level 45 max-rank demon, highly skilled in poison use. In addition, he has hundreds of eyes on his chest that can release a deadly golden light. He concludes by saying that the king likes lilies. Confused, the protagonist asks about the lilies, and the demon explains that it means the king is actually a woman who likes being with other women. The protagonist immediately thinks that if the hundred-eyed king is a woman, then she should go to the Star Tower. He then asks the demon where the person they captured is. The demon says that the women were kept in the cave for the king's entertainment, but the men. The protagonist interrupts him, staring seriously at the demon and demanding he quickly say what happened to the men. The demon continues, saying that the men were brought by someone very important. The protagonist asks who that person is, and the demon replies that, besides the hundred-eyed king, no one else knows the identity of that person. The protagonist then eliminates the demon and says that in his next life, he should remember to be a good demon. He then stops and thinks about what he should do. He believes he wouldn't be able to withstand the attacks of the hundred-eyed king and tries to think of a way out of the situation. Pacing back and forth, he considers reporting it to the game administrators, but suspects that some of them might be followers of Gongbao. Suddenly, Liu has an idea. He takes the soul orb of the demon he killed and decides that, since the hundred-eyed king is very powerful, he should tame the white bone lady and use her shape-shifting ability to try to infiltrate the spider web cave. He takes the Star Tower and activates the white bone lady's pill, entering the tower. Upon arriving, he is welcomed by the two demonesses who live there. He asks the girls where the white bone lady is. The Hydra demoness points in a direction and says she's tied up right over there. The white bone lady is staring fiercely at the protagonist. Liu approaches her and asks for the pit of 1,000 worms to be opened, and a large pit opens right below where the demoness was. Liu then says that if she submits to him, he will free her from being tormented by the 1,000 worms. The white bone lady replies that if he thinks she'll bow to a mere human, she'd rather die. The protagonist then tells her to go ahead and cuts the rope that was holding her. The demoness falls into the pit of worms. Confident, Liu says that if she changes her mind, she can call for him, and he will save her. But the demoness is actually very comfortable, sitting in the pit of worms, which leaves the protagonist speechless. Frustrated, Liu kicks the wall until his foot hurts. The two demonesses ask why Liu gave her a gift. Irritated, looking back, the protagonist wonders what he should do now. The protagonist says he is very irritated at that moment, as the new accessory is ineffective against the white bone demon. Smiling, the demon says she has practiced Taoism for many years and has never experienced such a feeling. She asks the protagonist why he doesn't join in too. She's so happy that she even starts to hum. Liu quickly pulls her out of the pit, sits her in a chair, and ties her arms. He wonders what he should do, since not only did the item have no effect, but the white bone demon actually enjoyed the worms. The demon princess approaches and comments that he's been working too hard lately. She says she asked her servant to help him by giving him a massage. The Hydra demon, sitting on a bench, calls Liu to lie down with his head in her lap, saying she'll give him a head massage. The white bone demon laughs and says that a mere mortal still expects her to surrender. Irritated, the protagonist says he'll just leave her alone for a while. Liu then lies on the Hydra demon's lap. She asks the protagonist when he'll start favoring them, since all the residents of the Star Tower are women. Feeling comfortable, the protagonist replies that he'll talk about the benefits later. For now, he just wants to enjoy the massage, which is really good. The princess asks the protagonist if she can massage his other head, and begins to tease him with her feet. The protagonist's head responds that it feels amazing. The massage is so incredible that the protagonist ends up evolving his internal spirit. The princess asks if he's satisfied now. The protagonist asks what stage she's at, and she replies that she's still at the Great Demon stage. The protagonist thinks that the reason he managed to evolve his internal defenses was thanks to Xiao Jiuzi, but he still can't break the psychological barrier he has regarding her. He believes this evolution will help him in the battle against the Hundred-Eyed King. Liu then turns to the princess and says he wants to help her increase her strength, and clarifies that he has no other intentions. The princess asks if he's talking about dual cultivation. She says she has longed for this day for a while and begs him to come quickly. Liu suggests they go somewhere more isolated to practice. He says this while looking at the Hydra demon. They respond that there's no need to run away. They have extraordinary hearing and sight, so leaving wouldn't help much. They'd see everything anyway. Liu then says he'll practice right there. The princess asks him to be gentle. A few minutes pass. The protagonist says he'll do some exercises first and then continue, aiming to reach the peak today. The Hydra demon is impressed and wonders if that would count as progress. She grabs the protagonist's shoulder and says she wants to practice too. Awkwardly, the protagonist says he's not at full capacity at the moment, and if Xiao Jiuzi joins, he won't be able to help both of them advance. But the Hydra still keeps pulling him while he considers whether he should help her increase her strength. He reflects that, even though she is now completely a woman, he still can't overcome his mental barriers about her. At that moment, he notices a puddle of water on the floor and wonders where it came from. Suddenly, a tsunami forms in front of him. Shocked, the protagonist tries to figure out what's going on. The white bone lady is now completely out of control, shouting that she wants to join in too. Liu asks Princess Wansheng and Xiao Jiuzi to cast spells to suppress the physiological tsunami, while he tries to approach the white bone lady. And so, the protagonist moves toward the demon, protected by his two servants. The demon screams in fury, demanding to take part in everything. The girls urge the protagonist to go quickly and stop the white bone lady's rampage. Looking at the out-of-control demon, the protagonist says that if she resists, she will have a chance to ascend. He approaches her body and says he knows that demons with strong desires like her can be tamed using his dual cultivation technique. But he also says that if she willingly surrenders, he will fight bravely to help her ascend. Then he asks if she can calm down, and kisses her, making the demon regain control and return to herself. The demon asks if he expects her to surrender with just a kiss. The protagonist asks if she is truly willing to submit to him. She approaches and says he'll receive some benefits if she does surrender, like he. One of the protagonist's snakes suddenly comes out, saying it couldn't hold back anymore. The demon says he can extract the snake aura ability and use his own chi to condense those treasures. Looking at the protagonist, she asks if he expects her to give in on the very first time. She gets closer and asks if he's not actually interested in her transformation ability. Seeing the look on his face, she smiles and says it seems she guessed right. She then says it would be a great choice, as it would help protect the protagonist's innate spiritual treasure. But at that moment, Xiao Zuji steps in front of the protagonist and tells the demoness that she cannot speak like that to the master. She asks Princess Wansheng to slap the demoness in the mouth. The princess simply agrees, adjusting her sleeve. Trying to calm the situation, the protagonist asks them to relax and let him handle it. He then turns to the white-bone demon and asks what her conditions are. She says that, first of all, she wants him to help her reach the realm of the Demon King. Then, from now on, they'll need to practice dual cultivation 100 times a week. Shocked, the protagonist asks if she's trying to kill him, while Xiao Zuji says that would only happen in his dreams. The protagonist tries to offer 10 times a week instead, but the demon refuses that offer. He says that if he can't get her ability, he'll find another way. He explains that just recently he managed to greatly improve his defenses, and that fighting the Hundred-Eyed King won't be as difficult now. The demon is impressed upon seeing his status and wonders how he could have such a defense level, comparable to a demon king's. The protagonist continues, saying that she only has 8 transformations, while the heavens have 36, and the earthly evil has 72, meaning anyone could surpass her in that regard. He approaches her again and says she's a smart woman and knows that, with the connections he built in his past life, he could easily acquire that ability elsewhere. He finishes by saying that if she doesn't accept today, she won't be able to change his mind tomorrow. Desperate as she watches him walk away, she agrees to the proposal of 10 times a week, but she has one condition. She wants to be the leader of the place. The protagonist replies that this is impossible for the owner of a harem, but as a concubine, he might consider it. The demoness agrees and asks if he will start practicing with her today. The protagonist asks the tower to block the vision and hearing of the princess and the Hydra. The system message appears, saying yes, but warns that the king must unlock more features in the future. It also states that once the king captures the 5th monster, the attic gate will open, and each monster will have their own room. The higher the room level, the faster the cultivation rate. Xiao Zuji arrives crying, saying she hates all of this but still wants a high-quality room. The protagonist, irritated, says he's not joking around. This is serious, for the sake of his cultivation. A golden cage forms around Princess Wanxing and Xiao Zuji. The white bone demon waits for the protagonist, calling him to practice dual cultivation with her. The protagonist's golden treasure immediately shows up, saying hello, and enters the dark tunnel. The demoness yells that they're about to advance, and asks him to pour the ancient liquid onto her body. Collecting it with her hands, she says that every drop must be used well. And so, she ascends to the Demon King level. Overjoyed, the white bone demon says that the protagonist is a natural-born saint in the world of dual cultivation, and that practicing with him is the same as cultivating for 100 years. Smiling, the protagonist says that now it's time for her to pass on the transformation ability to him, and so she does. The protagonist acquires a new skill, but upon analyzing it, he realizes he can now transform into various strange insects and larvae. Looking at this, the protagonist wonders if he's been tricked. Meanwhile, the white bone demon rests comfortably on a bench behind him. The protagonist then decides to go in search of the 100-eyed demon king. At that moment, inside the spider web cave, the 100-eyed king was looking at his cell phone. He came across a post on some website where a man was selling a dual cultivation potion made by his grandson, Liu Nian, claiming that anyone who used it would have a longer life. The insect queen said she wasn't interested in dual cultivation, then stood up and asked her subordinate to bring the prisoner forward. The prisoner was Shu. The queen approached and said that this girl was quite attractive. Stammering, Shu asked what the demon queen wanted. Meanwhile, our protagonist, transformed into a mosquito, entered the room and realized that it was Shu who was there. He thought he only wanted to investigate the cave, but hadn't imagined he would have to rescue her. The demon queen told Shu to become her wife, promising she would gain magical powers faster than with that Liu Nian's dual cultivation. The protagonist, still flying around as a mosquito, thought it was too late, but tried to find a weak point. Then he saw a flower in front of him and decided to fly toward it. He began biting the flower and doing all sorts of things to it. The demon queen shoved Shu away at that moment and said that her flower was suddenly very itchy. Shu asked if the demon queen might have some kind of disease and begged Liu to save her from that critical moment. The queen questioned whether she could really be sick, since it was itching so much. She turned to one of her subordinates and asked her to quickly call her cousin, Lady Spider. The protagonist took advantage of that moment to fly away quickly. One of the demon queen's lackeys approached the spider cousin and told her that the queen was calling for her to diagnose a sudden itch. The little spider said her cousin was a good person, but she was now playing with fire. The protagonist was observing the spider and realized she was a small lady spider of level 36. Liu, who was up in a tree, launched a powerful attack on the spider and the small demon accompanying her. The spider turned and asked who he was, looking at the protagonist, who was still atop the tree. The protagonist jumped down and landed a blow on the spider, introducing himself as the badass Liu Nian, and said that a new demon core was guaranteed. However, he ended up receiving only a green belt and turned around angrily, asking where the new core was. Suddenly, he received a message from the system saying that he had obtained the core from the little lady spider. Liu felt relieved and said he had been scared thinking that such a beautiful demon wouldn't have a core. Using his transformation technique, the protagonist decided to transform into the spider but realized something was missing in his appearance to make it more perfect. After making some adjustments, he declared it perfect. A few minutes later, the protagonist arrived at the spider web cave and was announced as the little lady spider. He noticed a silhouette hanging at the cave entrance. Seeing a woman there, the protagonist promised that the 100-eyed demon lord would pay for what had been done. The demon queen saw her supposed cousin and ran toward her in desperation. She hugged the protagonist and said she was happy her cousin had finally arrived. However, the protagonist got a little too excited with the close contact, and his golden treasure ended up getting out of control. The demon queen asked if her cousin was hiding something there. Trying to cover it up, the protagonist said he was carrying a demon-detonating grenade and asked if the queen wanted to see it. She replied that she could check it out later, but first, she wanted to talk about the reason she had called her cousin, a rather embarrassing matter. The demon queen turned to her subordinates and said she wanted to speak in private with her cousin. The protagonist asked what she needed, but in his thoughts, he was just thinking that he would offer a beautiful and large incense stick after helping her with her condition, until he was startled by what was in front of him. The demon queen was showing her flower and asking the protagonist to hurry and help cure her. With a sweet look, the queen insists that her supposed cousin help her with that again. The protagonist asks if he could eat the flower raw, without even washing it. The demon queen asks what's wrong with her cousin today. Staring at the protagonist, the queen begins to suspect something. She approaches and asks if he might not be her real cousin. Trying to get out of the situation, the protagonist says his stomach isn't feeling very well. The queen takes the protagonist's hand and tells him to accompany her for a bath. A few minutes later, inside the bathhouse, covered in foam, the demon asks her cousin if she doesn't look like a fizzy bath bomb. At that moment, the protagonist thinks he can't take it anymore. He tries to turn around, but the demon queen hugs him, asking if her cousin doesn't love her anymore, since she never acted like that before. The queen then asks why her cousin's grenade got bigger. The protagonist replies that it must have expanded from being in the water. The demon asks if that wouldn't be dangerous and says she'll throw it away, but the protagonist runs out of there at that moment. Embarrassed, Liu responds that it's all right, but that the grenade's protection is activated. The queen runs toward her cousin, hugs her, and says she missed her very much. Suddenly, the protagonist's magical treasure activates and releases a direct shot at the demon, who gets startled upon seeing what appeared on her cousin. The queen stands up and says her purity mark has disappeared, then asks if her cousin is actually a man. The demon queen is extremely angry because all her cultivation had been ruined. The protagonist reveals his disguise and says he didn't want to do this. Upon seeing the real protagonist there, the demon queen says she'll finish him off and tries to land a blow on Liu, who quickly dodges. He says she has already caused too many problems for humanity and that today she'll be defeated. The demon replies that this is a joke and that even though she lost part of her cultivation, a mere mortal like him could never defeat her. At that moment, the two enter a frenzied battle. The demon queen activates one of her skills, the 100-leg strike, but Liu quickly activates his serpents to defend against the attacks, leaving the demon confused and frozen before the protagonist. Outraged, the queen says it's impossible for a mere human to survive that attack. Still with a nosebleed, the protagonist asks if she really thinks she can kill him. The demon begins to channel her power. Her body becomes completely engulfed in magic, and her 100 eyes are activated. She says she wants to see if Liu can withstand her ultimate move. Then, she launches several beams of energy from her eyes toward Liu. He quickly shrinks and transforms into a mosquito once again. Liu asks his other heads to protect him from the fatal attacks, and they agree firmly. Together, they charge toward the demon queen, who continues to attack everything around her. A huge explosion erupts in the room. Confused, the queen wonders where her body is gone, but the protagonist, now above her, strikes her with a powerful blow using his phoenix sword, completely destroying any remaining chance for the king of 100 eyes. Looking at the demon, the protagonist says it was easy because he already knew all of her moves. He raises his sword and declares that after this final blow, the King of 100 Eyes will be finished for good. But then a voice is heard, asking him to stop. A person appears through a portal and explains that this demon is the guardian of the gate of Ativus, and asks if the protagonist could allow them to take her back there. Consumed by hatred, the protagonist apologizes and, with flaming eyes, says that every demon who falls into his hands must die. And so, he delivers one final blow to the demon. The person in the portal says that it seems Liu hasn't seen enough yet, and doesn't really understand how the rules work. Holding the Demon Queen's core, the protagonist asks what kind of idiotic rules these are, wondering how just because she's a servant of some god, she can go around doing whatever she wants. The woman replies that celestial beings have their own ways of handling things, and even the Monkey King, Sun Wukong, abides by the celestial laws. She twists her body and says that a mere mortal is trying to interfere in heavenly affairs. Liu draws his sword, prepares for battle, and tells the woman that in a society governed by law, everyone is equal. Observing the protagonist, the woman asks if he is Liu Nian, the one protected by Prince Neza, and then says it seems the prince gave him something that allows him to eliminate demons. The smiling protagonist begins to say they are, but the woman interrupts, asking if he dares to claim they are family. She prepares to attack Liu and says she'll apologize to the prince later for it. Seeing Liu defend himself, the woman comments that it's just a low-level spell and decides to eliminate the protagonist. However, when she strikes Liu's shield, she cannot break it with her trident. She asks how his defense can be so strong, enough to withstand even her celestial thunder attack. The protagonist says that his older brother, Neza, gave him many treasures. The woman remarks that the prince must value him greatly, but as a mere mortal who dares challenge a celestial, he deserves death. Liu then kicks her in the lower region and says she forced him to do it. At that moment, the woman feels paralyzed, as if her flower had been shattered and its petals falling away. Staring at the protagonist, she declares that Liu truly deserves to be eliminated immediately. She raises one hand and summons the gourd of celestial thunder. The protagonist grows anxious, wondering if his outfit will withstand the attack. Meanwhile, the woman looks at him confidently. She opens the gourd, allowing the lightning to shoot toward Liu. But just then, another woman appears, asking the winged woman to stop. A lotus-shaped shield forms around Liu, catching the attention of the woman who is attacking him. This newcomer is Xiangu, an early-stage immortal. Xiangu asks Lei Nyangzi if she could let the young mortal go. Nyangzi promptly agrees and says that man will likely become their enemy in the future, but hopes he'll have more sense and not cause further trouble. Flying swiftly toward the portal she came from, Nyangzi looks back at the protagonist and says she will remember him. At that moment, an idea pops into the protagonist's mind. He clings to Xiangu, thanking her for saving him, and starts to shower her with exaggerated compliments, but she only asks him to stand up. Xiangu says that Celestials still don't understand human nature, and that Lei Nyangzi is arrogant to her very core. The protagonist replies that it's all right, because he too will become an immortal in the future, and confidently states that when the time comes, he will correct the atmosphere of the celestial realm. Liu then imagines what he'll do about Nyangzi when that time comes. Shu runs to Xiangu and says she thought she would never see her ancestor again. Xiangu hugs her and says she never imagined that this celestial hunt would cause Shu so much pain. Crying, Shu tries to explain that the protagonist saved her by defeating the 100-eyed demon. Smiling, Xiangu understands that the protagonist was the one who rescued her descendant. She looks at him and says that if he had the courage to face the 100-eyed demon king to save Shu, then he must truly be in love with her. Realizing the situation, the protagonist sees that Xiangu misunderstood everything, but decides to go along with it. It's not so bad to have one more ally. Xiangu then says that from now on, the protagonist is their family's son-in-law, and that if he ever needs anything, she will be at his service. Embarrassed, the protagonist tries to respond, but is interrupted by a man standing beside Mai Jao. shouting that he opposes the marriage. The man says he heard from his junior that Shu was in danger, trapped in that cave, and so he rushed over to save her. He asks if Shu is all right. Xiangu replies that Minister Xing is very kind and confirms Shu is fine, but then asks why he objects to the marriage. Minister Xing says Mai Jiao also likes Liu Nian and that the two are even quite close. Staring at the protagonist, Xiangu says she thought he was more sentimental, but the protagonist, startled, says he didn't do anything wrong. The two then look at him and ask whom he will choose, he Shu or Su Mai Jiao. Shu stepped in front of the protagonist, saying she was willing to share Liu Nian with her sister Mai Jiao, and asked that he not be forced to make choice. Mai Jiao agreed, saying she was also open to that, since the protagonist's ability in dual cultivation was very powerful, and she wasn't sure she could handle alone. The two elders looked at the girls, confused. Xiangu turned and said she would no longer interfere in the affairs of the young. Minister Xing commented that there were two ladies wanting to serve their husband. He really was one lucky dog. At that moment, the protagonist thought to himself that there were 6 more besides those two. Xiangu warned that even if Liu was skilled in dual cultivation, he should practice it with moderation to avoid causing conflict between the women. The protagonist bowed and thanked her for the advice. Minister Xing looked at him and said he reminded him of someone, a famous Star Lord named Dxian. The protagonist asked if that wasn't the tyrannical King Zhou of Shang. The minister replied that that's what human history books say, but the truth is much more complex, and he would tell another time. He added that after Dxian's death, he was named a celestial king, and that he had been one of the minister's few friends. At that moment, the minister recalled fond memories of his old friend. Seeing the expression on his face, Xiangu called him a foolish old man for acting like that in front of the younger ones. The minister said that if Dxian hadn't broken the rules, he would have loved to introduce him to Liu. He added that he would check if his friend had left behind any techniques, and if he had, he would inform Liu. The protagonist thanked the minister for such a great honor, thinking to himself that this might solve his problem of not receiving points for dual cultivation when not in Dxian form. The minister began saying his goodbyes, explaining he needed to resume his patrol. Xiangu told the protagonist and the girls that they could return using the airship. She then took a small object in her hand and explained that the flying vessel would take them back and could even defend against demon attacks. The protagonist accepted the item and thanked Xiangu for her care, but said he couldn't return yet. He needed to find his father, who was nearby. Minister Xing was intrigued to learn that the protagonist's father was also cultivating in that game. He pulled a hair from Liu's head and, using it, began to search for the protagonist's father. Liu asked how his father was doing, and the minister said Liu's father had escaped and was currently on the 3rd floor, safe, with no demons nearby. Relieved, Liu said he was glad his father was well, but at the moment, he couldn't go up to the 3rd floor. So he asked the minister and Xiangu to help him find his father. The minister said they would search for Liu's father immediately and that if they had any news, they would contact him. The girls hugged the protagonist and told him not to worry. Their ancestors would find his father. The minister and Xiangu then decided to depart. Mai Jiao and Shu took the opportunity to tell the protagonist that the guild battle was about to begin and that now would be a good time to cultivate. Meanwhile, at Gongbao's castle base, he had just received word that Liu had defeated another demon. Outraged, he thought that Neza must have given Liu some secret weapon that allowed him to subdue demons. He kept thinking that if his name weren't on that damned list of gods, he would personally destroy that mortal. But Gongbao stood up and said he could go to the leader of the Celestial Guild and ask him to deal with Liu Nian. Recalling what had happened, Gongbao said the leader would be very pleased to hear that. Meanwhile, somewhere in the void, a person was kneeling and sealed in place. A voice echoed through the space, saying that disciple Zia had suffered greatly. The man bound there was Jiang Zia. The voice continued, stating that the master had foreseen the invasion of the demon world and the fall of the 3 realms. Therefore, it demanded that Jiang Zia play the game and investigate which of the gods were conspiring with the demons. Jiang Zia asked if the traitor wasn't Gongbao, and why the master hadn't suppressed him. The voice replied that Gongbao was just bait, and that the real conspirator was at the top of the fairy realm. Zhang Zia questioned whether a traitor could really exist in such a high realm, and the voice confirmed it, explaining that the fact the traitor hadn't been discovered yet meant he was in a realm close to that of a sage. The voice asked Jiang to inspect Gongbao's devices and also investigate the people on the list. Furthermore, it warned that it wouldn't be able to protect him if something happened, so in case of danger, Jiang should summon the master to be protected. With a serious expression, Zhang Zia replied that he would follow the orders, but said he had something to report to the master. He revealed that all the monsters Gongbao had helped smuggle were killed one by a mortal named Liu Nian. The voice responded that many mortals are talented at slaying monsters, but that it would send someone to verify his origins. If found pure, Liu would be allowed in and trained. At that moment, a small pouch containing a red stone began to emit a golden glow. Gongbao realized that Zhang Zia was speaking with the original celestial lord. Meanwhile, in the pavilion hall of the Star Sect, the wife of the guild president, Liu Nian, was berating her husband, Hong Jin. She called him useless and asked what kind of technique he had practiced to become a eunuch. She shouted that her life was very hard, and that if she had followed him, she would be a widow. The man replied that once he reached level 100, he would surely be able to restore his lower parts, and then his wife could do whatever she pleased. Stepping on him further, Liu Nian asked when exactly that would happen. Gongbao arrived at that moment, saying it would be in just 1 week. The couple looked at the door, confused. He introduced himself as Gongbao, a poor man. The two looked at him with excitement, and Hong Jin recognized him as one of the game's administrators. Liu Nian quickly composed herself and said she was happy to meet Lord Gongbao, while her husband wondered if Gongbao was checking out his wife. A little irritated, Gongbao replied that a poor man didn't like women. Hong Jin grew excited and said that was to be expected. After all, a Taoist priest was noble and virtuous, not to be compared with mere mortals. However, when Liu Nian turned to leave, Gongbao asked her to stay. She became excited, thinking he had fallen for her charm despite being a noble Taoist. Completely irritated, Gongbao thought that once the business was finished, the two of them would be sacrificed to the great demon. He then turned to the guild president and asked him to kneel, as he had a request. Hong Jin thought to himself how the gods always came asking for help while making mortals kneel. Meanwhile, Liu Nian asked if Gongbao wanted to perform dual cultivation with her, but Gongbao had enough and, emanating a powerful aura, said that was enough. Gongbao explained that he needed help to deal with someone. The president asked who it was, and he replied, Liu Nian. Irritated, the president asked if it was that damned Liu Nian born with a sacred dual cultivation body. Gongbao confirmed it. Hong Jin said he had been searching for him for a long time, to avenge the death of his brother. Liu Nian then asked Gongbao if Liu Nian was an enemy. Gongbao told the president not to worry, as he had a magical weapon to take care of it. He then showed a strange set of false teeth with extremely sharp fangs, and asked Liu Nian to use the magical item to try to confiscate Liu Nian's dual cultivation tools. He began to leave the room, saying that this was the only way to stop Liu Nian. As he entered the portal, he guaranteed that if it worked, Hong would evolve to level 100 within a week. The president held the item with a disappointed look, but thought that at least it was just with her mouth. He turned to his wife and said she would only be allowed to use her mouth, and Liu Nian replied that she understood. Sometime later, Liu returned to the VIP area where Fong was. Before he could say anything, she already raised her phone, irritated, and asked if he had been eating out. She threatened him, saying that if he didn't feed her every day, he would no longer be allowed to go out. Frightened, Liu realized at that moment that he was being exposed. That's it for today's episode. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a chapter. See you in the next one.